Adjustment public hearings are being conducted virtually by electronic means through WebEx Webinar, an online digital platform, and streamed on the Toronto City Planning YouTube channel. Participants who have registered in advance will be able to make their presentations to the committee using WebEx Webinar, which is moderated by city staff. Anyone wishing to view the hearing may watch on YouTube. Participants who have registered in advance will be connecting with their computer, tablet, smartphone, or telephone. All participants will automatically be muted on entry. When your item is called, each participant will be unmuted by the moderator, one person at a time. We ask that you also mute your devices until you are called on to speak. Today, Committee of Adjustment is offering attendees the option to appear by video. Those attendees that have registered in advance to attend by video will be temporarily upgraded to panelists when your item is being held. During this time, your camera will be enabled. You will only be visible during your 5-minute allotted speaking time. At all other times, your video will be disabled and you will be reinstated as an attendee. Committee of Adjustment staff will share presentations submitted in accordance with the written submission deadline. Members of the public and applicants are not allowed to use share screen or any other panelist controls during a video appearance. The host will remove you from the panelist role if you fail to respect this instruction. We acknowledge the land we are meeting on as the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. In accordance with Sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act, this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Toronto is called to order. The Committee of Adjustment considers applications for variances from the provisions of the zoning that applies to property, permission to extend or alter lawful non-conforming uses, and consent to sever property to create new lots. Anyone in attendance today who wants to receive a copy of the decision of the committee on an application must submit a written request for a decision by email. Please ensure you include your name, address, and email address because the Committee of Adjustment and the Toronto Local Appeal Body will be sending notifications and appeal updates by email. If you do not agree with our decision, decisions may be appealed to the Toronto Local Appeal Body or, in some limited circumstances, to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Appeal instructions are set out at the bottom of the decision of the committee. The hearing procedure today. I would call each item in the order listed on the agenda. Making your submissions. When an application is uncontested, the agent or applicant may proceed with their presentation if desired. When the committee does not require a presentation, applicants are to advise the chair should they wish to speak to the committee. The committee may ask questions and/or take the matter into committee for a decision. Each speaker, including the applicant agent, will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address the committee. I will comment when you are reaching the 5 minutes. When addressing the committee, please clearly state your name and address. Please remember to confine your remarks to the matters outlined in the application. The applicant or agent will proceed first and will make a presentation to the committee on the application. Please note the committee may not entertain revisions to proposals at the hearing today. The committee may decide to defer the application if substantially revised to ensure the revised application is accurate and that all those entitled to notice of the application are informed of the changes. Then individuals, either in support or opposed to the application, will be invited to speak. Committee members may ask questions of each speaker after they have finished their presentation. When all speakers are finished, the applicant agent has an opportunity to rebut only those issues that were raised by the speakers. This will mark the end of the discussion. The application will then be taken into committee for a decision. Do we have minutes of the last minute meeting to confirm, Madam Deputy Secretary Treasurer?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and panel members. Yes, the November 2nd minutes are ready for adoption.
Okay. Do we have a motion for adoption of the minutes? Zahir, do we have a seconder? Nimrod, all in favor of confirmation of the last minute meetings? Minutes are confirmed. Are there any declarations of interest or panel or staff for the items in the 9:30 time slot?
No.
Okay. Madam Deputy Secretary Treasurer, have you received any requests for a deferral in this morning time slot?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, item number 12, 33 Shuttle Avenue, there has been a request for deferral. And through you, Mr. Chair, there are no files to be closed this morning.
Okay, thank you. Okay, move on to number 1, 227 Lansdowne Avenue. The purpose of this application is to alter the existing 2-story detached dwelling by constructing a 1-story rear addition and a rear ground floor deck. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant and a report from Metrolinx. Tony Valentin.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Can we have your name and address for the record, please?
Tony Valentin. My address is at 8 Wellesley Street East, Suite 702, Toronto.
Okay, sir. I think your application is straightforward.
Yes, we have only 2 minor variances.
Yeah. So we don't need a presentation from you. So
Thank you.
Is that higher? Okay, so we'll take it into committee. Panel, do you have any questions? Okay, do we have comments or do we have a motion? Zahir?
Thank you, Chair. This is a very, very, very straightforward application. I see no issues with it. There is a Metrolinx report, which as long as the applicant is aware of, I think I'd like to move a motion to approve if there are no questions or other considerations from my colleagues.
Okay, so do we have a seconder? Nimrod, all in favor of the application? You have your approval, sir. Thank you. Number 2, 76 Dunvegan Road. The purpose of this application to alter the existing 2-story detached dwelling by constructing a 2nd-story addition with a rear terrace above the existing 1-story portion of the dwelling. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant. We have correspondence in support from addresses on Warren Road and Dunvegan Road. Mr. Swadron.
Yes, hello, how are you?
Good. Can we have your name and address for the record, sir?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and panel members. My name is Wayne Swadron. My address is 160 Paris Avenue, Toronto, Suite 210.
All right, so we have quite a few variances, so perhaps you could give us a very brief presentation, Mr. Swadron. Just tell us what this is about.
Absolutely. It might be helpful to refer to our supporting materials submitted. Yes, exactly. That's perfect. So the proposal is to add a second-story addition over an existing one-story portion of the house. The second-story addition is adjacent to the north property line. The property to the north of that property line at number 88 is under construction. It might be helpful to flip to the third page. I believe it's the third page of this submission. There you go. Where you can see arrows pointing to the subject property at 76, and then the building under construction at 88. So in the lower picture, you're looking at the one-story, the existing one-story portion of number 76, and above you're seeing 88 under construction. Currently, these are current photographs. So the proposal is, the design proposal is the addition of a second-story portion setback from the garage face that you're looking at by approximately 12 feet. The height of which is equal to the height of the existing house at number 76 Dunvegan, but considerably lower than the house under construction at 88. The variances fall under 4 major categories. There are 8 variances, but it's really just 4 items that are being identified. If we go to the first page of this brief, the variances 1, 2, and 8 are in relationship to a second floor terrace or walkout from the addition. That balcony is a very, very shallow feature that is designed to provide privacy for the room behind it, also some sun shelter, and also privacy from overlook, both for the benefit of number 88 and 76. It sits above the existing roof structure of the one-story portion of the existing house. You can see that actually if I'm looking at the photographs, but if we could flip back to the first page of this brief. There you go. So there you see the arrow pointing to the new proposed balcony. There is an existing second-story balcony, which is situated to the south, which you can see as well. They're not connected. They don't relate to one another. And also you can see the privacy wall for this recessed walkout. The recessed walkout has an effective depth of 3'9", so it's not designed for any intent of use or furnishing. The second page of this package refers to variances number 3 and 4, which are side yard setback variances beyond the 17-meter depth. And these variances, because the existing house is already in this footprint, the addition just continues its extrusion up of that existing variances. They were approved in a 2011 application. The back face of the proposed second-story addition aligns with the back face of the existing ground floor addition, existing ground floor structure, and it aligns with the rear component of the house under construction, number 88, and shares a similar setback to number 88. Is consistent within the neighborhood and consistent in the immediate proximity of the neighboring house. The only portion of this proposed addition that actually is new construction from the ground up is situated considerably further from the north side property line, about 9.7 meters, and constitutes only about 160 square feet. So a very small portion of the proposed addition is new build. The next page, I think we looked at the photographs, so that explains where the addition is going. This is a photograph of the existing condition of the one-story portion of number 76. Aside the 88 Dunvegan under construction, you're seeing scaffolding. I guess they're finishing the exterior wall, but that's the existing condition. We're not adding to that. The next slide is talking about building height, and we've identified, so the proposal is for a 10.4 meter height, which is equal to the existing height of the building at 76. So the addition will not exceed the height that it currently is. And the neighboring house, again at number 88, had an approved height of 11.67 meters, so 4 feet or so taller than what we are proposing here. So the 10.4 meters is consistent not only with the existing house, but also with decisions that this committee has approved for homes of comparable size in this location. So,
Mr. Swadron, your time is up.
Yes.
Perhaps you could wrap up.
Okay, simply one more variance, number 6, for FSI. The existing FSI is 0.65. We're asking for an increase of 0.75, which again is consistent with homes of comparable size in this neighborhood.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Panel, do you have any questions? Okay. Do we have any comments? Do we have a motion? Yes, Nimrod.
Yeah, although there are quite a few variances that are proposed, I think in totality, the variances are minor in nature. I did find that the presentation was helpful, and I would move approval of the variances with no conditions.
All right, a seconder, Sahir, all in favor. Have your approval. Thank you, sir. Number 3, 820 Yonge Street. The purpose of this application is to alter the redevelopment plan for the 75-story tower building, Tower C East Block, and the 50 and 64-story buildings, Towers A and B West Block on Parcel A, approved under Site-Specific Bylaws 661-2020 and 662-2020, by changing the location of the required non-residential gross floor area and loading spaces, decreasing the outdoor residential amenity space, increasing the number of dwelling units to 1,815 units, and providing no parking spaces on site. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant and email correspondence from planning. Mr. Brown?
Chairman and members of committee, I did submit to you just 6 slides. I can share it if you don't have it, if I'm allowed to share.
Sure.
Oh, maybe there you go. Okay. And my video's not on, but I guess that doesn't matter. You can still hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Thank you. So this is just, the first slide just tells you where this has been. In 2020, this was approved. There was a decision to allow some of the technical variances that I'll speak to you about because of the phasing. But instead of going 2 or 3 times back and forth, we wanted to finish the site plan application for both towers A and B and C. It's a 3-tower scheme. We've been reviewing this with city planning and all the various departments. We've got the final zoning review from buildings, and now we have the variances that implement what we were doing with planning staff. So if you go to the next slide, since the time of this approval, oh yeah, the loading one sec next, okay. Since the time of this approval, there's been a couple of things that have happened. There's no requirement for parking in these types of sites, well served by transit, but the one you're seeing now in terms of the loading is simply because we have the same number of loading spaces. It's just that when we phase the development, they won't be in each phase, in other words. So the total site works in a comprehensive manner, but the bylaw was drafted in a way that didn't recognize that we're going to be phasing the development. So that's why we needed those changes, despite the fact that all of the loading that's required is provided, and we've worked with Works and Emergency Services and Planning who've agreed with that. If we go to the next slide. This is the one that shows you we have the amount of office space, which is on levels 3, 4, and 5, which it's always been in towers A and B. But if we proceed with the east tower first, we technically need the variance, again, because it's a phased development. So we're still maintaining the requirement to have 5,000 square meters. It's just making it clear that it's going to be on parcel A, not on Tower C. If we can go to the next slide. This just is showing you there's no difference in the built form in terms of what we're going to see before and after. We actually, in the next slide, will show you the sort of one with a purple middle, that we don't need that parking any longer based on the new city standards. So in the base of the building and elsewhere, we have the ability to rearrange the units, gain some gain some units in the building. You can see that on the next, there's a slide that sort of has a purple outline, not that one more. There we go. And so that area will be able to have residential units, and we've done that in accordance with the city requirements while still providing the percentage of 2 and 3 bedroom units, which is important in the city bylaw and which isn't changing for this. And then now the slide that you went to before, this site actually has been able to maintain the indoor amenity space even with the additional units. The outdoor amenity space is static only because we're giving about 25% of the site as a public park, which was a very positive aspect of this development. And we have outdoor amenity space that's connected to indoor, and we have the POPs at grade. So again, staff were satisfied that where we were able to provide the indoor amenity space increase, we did so. And this is a site that happens to have more outdoor amenity space than probably any of the downtown sites I've ever worked on. So that's the nature of the variances. We've worked cooperatively with city staff, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
So, Mr. Brown, I'd just like to ask you about the abolition of parking. And I note that in something I read in this application, it said, due to the new bylaw, new city bylaw regarding parking, and also the market conditions, do I take it then that you haven't been able to sell parking spaces, or you weren't selling parking spaces here?
The answer is all of the above. So the city changed the parking requirement in recognizing a couple of things that were happening. It was increasing the cost of development in the downtown core by providing some of the parking. And purchasers weren't interested when they're on a subway line of acquiring parking. And I always say this tongue-in-cheek, I'm a little older and always thought you always would want a parking space downtown. But I got kids in their late 20s who work downtown who their cars sit in the driveway and they don't need them anymore. So if you're on a subway line, we are finding there's almost no demand, if any. And that's even with older developments we've had. I'm working on 3 new developments in the Yonge and Gerrard area. All of the developments now actually we're providing 0 parking.
So you mean out of 1,815 units, nobody wants a parking spot? How are the odd people going to accommodate parking if they want to have a car?
In this particular area down the street, there's a development we did across from the Four Seasons where there's commercial parking being rebuilt for the city. And that's what seems to be happening. So, for instance, my own kids, when they were going downtown looking at spaces, they said any of their friends who need their cars because maybe they live downtown but have to go to work, outside of the city, they rent in commercial parking garages, which apparently have a huge amount of availability. I recently moved to Yonge and Eglinton area. We have empty spaces in our building, even in our office building, which again is shocking to me, being someone who, I've got to drive to different meetings elsewhere, but in my office, I'm the anomaly.
Okay, panel, any questions? Aaron, did you have a question?
Yes, I think I don't know if it is my connection, but the applicant talk about his name and address. I don't think I heard that.
I'm sorry. I'm getting over COVID, so my voice is bad. It's Adam Brown, and I'm the lawyer for the applicant, and my address is 40 Holly Street, Suite 404, Toronto.
Thank you. I'm just ready to support you, but I don't want to miss this kind of legal steps and then something like that, right? Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, Nimrod, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question in terms of service vehicles. If for 1,800 units, if Rogers shows up or other utility repair services or so on, where will they be parking if there isn't any parking spaces?
They still have the ability to get into all of the different loading areas, sort of large and smaller loading spaces. So even though they're provided on different portions of the site, they still have access to get on site, and all those loading spaces aren't used 24/7, so to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions, do we have any comments or do we have a motion? Yes, Nimrod.
Yeah, I think overall that the variances are minor in nature. This is a very large redevelopment phased project, and I think the variances are minor, and I would move approval with no conditions.
Do we have a seconder? Is it here? All in favor? Have your approval. Thank you, sir. Number 4. 581 Ossington Avenue. The purpose of this application to alter the existing 2 1/2 story townhouse dwelling by constructing a rear 2-story addition with a ground floor deck and a rear partial 3rd-story addition with a rooftop patio. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant and a report from planning. Mr. Flynn.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. Michael Flynn, 90 Cordova Avenue, Toronto.
Okay, thank you, sir. I don't think we need a presentation. It seems straightforward. Panel, do you have any questions? Any comments, or do we have a motion? Yes, Nimrod.
Yeah, there's only 2 variances, I believe. That's correct. And they are minor in nature, and I would move approval subject to community planning conditions.
All right. Zahir, you second that? All in favor? Have your approval. Thank you, sir. Number 5, 3 Mortimer Avenue. The purpose of this application is to permit a front yard parking pad abutting Mortimer Avenue. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, a report from planning, correspondence and support with no address provided, and a 3-signature petition in support from properties on Mortimer Avenue. Gregory Duncan.
Hi, Gregory, you've been unmuted.
Mr. Duncan, are you there?
Hello, yeah, it's Gregory Chambers, 3 Mortimer Avenue. Hello, Mr. Chairman and panel members.
Oh, okay, so it's Gregory Duncan Chambers. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
All right.
It's okay.
We left off the Chambers. Okay, and thank you. So I don't think we need any presentation from you. It seems relatively straightforward. Panel, do you have any questions? Nimrod?
Well, we do have a community planning report, I believe, which recommends refusal. So I'd like to hear the applicant's response to that report.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I actually spoke with Tiffany. It was an interesting conversation. So I did read it over. Their main reason for suggesting refusal was around the access to the rear parking. The reason that I'm actually going forward and trying to remove that is actually I don't have year-round access to the parking, given that it's a dirt pathway essentially to the rear. So during the winter months and any rain, we actually can't get down there and having a big issue around parking. Another thing that they had commented about was the lack of approval essentially for they don't support the front yard parking for people who do have access to rear parking. But you know, there is precedent set with 122 Jackman where they were able to move the parking into the front, as well as 1 Mortimer and 7 Mortimer also have access to rear parking but have front yard parking pads. So for this, I'm happy to have a condition set that I remove the rear parking pad and have that moved to the front.
And is that front yard proposed parking pad, is that going to be a permeable material?
Yes, sir. We worked with our landscaper on the pavers.
Yes, Aaron?
So two questions. Just following back about the fact that you will remove the parking at the back, are you going to put soft landscape there, equivalent to the same area that you're taking out from the front? And my second question is it a regular parking or a barrier-free parking?
I don't understand. So just what exactly is barrier-free? I guess would be my
It's
first
like
question.
for wheelchair, yeah, like a parking for wheelchair person.
Oh, yes, yes. So it would be barrier-free for sure. It would be out of yes. And then the second would be exactly if you go down to the presentation. Yeah, if you go down a little bit there. Yeah, I think the third slide. The third, right there. So at the bottom, you can see. No, up one. Sorry. Yeah, the frame shed there at the bottom is right now where we're parking. So that will be removed. And exactly to your point, there'd be a net zero hard surface to soft surface. And the idea would be to fence in the area and actually create a vegetable garden.
Okay, any further questions? Do we have any comments or motions here?
Yeah, I just like to make a comment. I think the applicant's explanation is quite a good one, because I was looking at the planning report suggesting refusal, but I think if we establish some conditions, particularly with regard to replacing the loss of the front soft landscaping with the shed at the back being replaced with soft landscaping, whether it's for gardening purposes or decorative, doesn't matter too much. As long as it's soft landscaping, I think I can support this particular application.
Okay, do we have, so are you going to make a motions here?
Sure, I could try and do that. So I'd like to a motion of approval, subject to a condition that the rear garage of, I think it's the framed shed, be replaced with soft landscaping, at least equivalent to the front yard parking pad, proposed front yard parking pad. I'm not sure if I've captured that accurately or not.
So I think maybe you should just add equivalent to the, in an amount, in an area equivalent to the area for front yard parking pad.
Parking pad, that sounds good.
Could we also add a condition that the front yard parking pad be a permeable material?
Absolutely.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Nimrod, all in favor? You have your approval, sir. Thank you. Number 6, 120 Moore Avenue. The purpose of this application is to alter the existing 2.5-story semi-detached dwelling by replacing the existing rear 2-story addition with a larger 2-story addition, and to construct a rear 2-level deck, a ground level deck with 2nd-story balcony. There will be 3 residential units in this dwelling. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, and we have opposition from 118 Moore Avenue. So Alice and Scott Taylor.
Hi, Alice, you've been unmuted.
Good morning, panel. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I apologize. My design planner suddenly became unavailable for this hearing. So we are proposing.
So can we have your name and address, please?
Sorry, Scott Taylor, owner of property at 120 Moore Avenue.
Okay.
SCOTTAYLOR. So we're proposing a change from a 2-unit dwelling to a 3-unit dwelling. And in so doing, we're proposing a minor variance of removing the existing 10 by 14 foot north-facing extension, replacing it with a new 2-story 14 foot by 20 foot extension, spanning from the existing east wall to the property line on the west side. Also, there will be the removal of the existing second floor patio and replacing it with a approximately same size new second floor patio. And we've also submitted a proposal to, in terms of the privacy on the east and west sides, we're proposing frosted glass railings for privacy on both sides. And also, we are seeking to remove a 10 by 10 existing rear shed, north-facing, and replacing it with an approximately 15.5 by 12-foot shed, including a green roof. And that's it.
All right, just one question. Is the screening in the plans?
No, not currently, no.
All right, so we would need to make that a condition if it's approved. All right, thank you, Mr. Taylor. Panel, do you have any questions? All right, Ken Temple?
Sorry, he's unavailable for the meeting as well.
All right, Lee Taylor?
Again, unavailable.
All right, thank you. Nimrod?
Yeah, I had a question for the applicant. Have they spoken with the adjacent neighbor that had raised some concerns?
Yes, there has been ongoing conversations in regards to both the privacy issue from our second floor balcony and the proposed building of the additional extension in regards to having no setback to the property line, yes.
And was there any way to come to some type of agreement amongst yourself and the neighbor?
Yes, I've got emails going back and forth stating that the privacy frosted glass was appreciated. So I don't know if that entirely satisfies my neighbor in terms of the privacy, but his email indicated that it was appreciated. And also, my neighbor at 118 spoke with my contractor, and it was reported to me to be a favorable conversation in terms of our proposed extension.
All right, thank you.
But in any event, there's no opposition today. All right, any other questions, panel? All right, do we have any comments? Do we have a motion? Nimrod? You're muted, Nimrod. We can't hear you.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I think that the variances are minor in nature, and I would move approval with condition dealing. I think it's with the screening.
Yes.
One of the other panel members pick up on that one. How should that be worded?
I think screening on, privacy screening on the east and west sides of the second floor balcony.
Great, yes.
And you might want to say of opaque material and 1.5 meters high.
That's
yes.
correct. Yeah.
Do we have a seconder? Zahir, all in favor? Have your approval, sir. Thank you. Number 7, 163 Cowan Avenue, and the purpose of this application is to alter the existing three-story detached dwelling by replacing the existing rear one-story addition with a larger one-story addition, and to construct a new rear deck. Also to construct a new one-story ancillary building detached garage in the rear yard. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, and we have a report from Urban Forestry. Mr. Mazzatelli?
Hi, Joe. You've been unmuted.
Yes, I'm here.
Can we have your name and address for the record, sir?
Joseph Mazzatelli, 608 Oriole Parkway, Toronto.
Okay, thank you. I don't think, seems straightforward. I don't think we need a presentation. Panel, do you have any questions? Do we have comments, or do we have a motion? Say here.
Thank you, Chair. This is a very straightforward one. Again, there's only one variance before us, so I don't see any issues with it. I'd like to propose a motion to approve with forestry condition number 2 as part of the approval.
All right, do we have a seconder? Aaron, you second the motion? Thank you. All in favor? Have your approval. Thank you, sir. Number 8, 8 Foxley Street. Purpose of this application is to alter the existing two-story detached dwelling by constructing a front two-story addition with a second-story balcony, a third-story addition, and the rear first, second, and third-story balconies. Also to install a secondary suite by converting the existing one-unit dwelling into a two-unit dwelling. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant. We have a report from Urban Forestry and from Community Planning. Marco Vieira.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Marco Vieira. I'm at 257 Dunraven Drive, and I'm the agent and designer for this application.
Yes, okay. So perhaps you, seems to be a lot of variances. Perhaps you could give us a very brief idea of what this is about.
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Chair. The application before you is to take the existing two-story detached dwelling and add a series of additions while not changing the footprint of the current dwelling. Looking to build over the existing front porch and enclosed second floor porch in the front of the dwelling. And we're also looking at putting a new third story on top of the existing dwelling. Existing setbacks on both east and west and also on the north property lines are to be maintained. We did have a few discussions with planning with regards to our proposal, where we went through many other applications in the surrounding area to justify the FSI. The point of discussion was to take the third floor footprint and basically reset it back a little bit further from the existing two-story footprint. Essentially, the second story is being proposed approximately 2.6 meters back on the front facade, and we also brought in the rear second story, so the third floor sets in as well. And in doing so, we brought the FSI to 1.494 times the lot area, down from the originally proposed 1.534. So essentially, variance number 3 be revised to show 1.49 times the lot area. The variance number 4 and 5.
So, Mr. Mazzatelli, we also need, in addition to the times, we need the actual square meters. Was,
can
you
do
were
that.
requesting 244.1, we need to know what the revised one is.
The revised square meters is 237.67 meters squared. I did submit a revised waiver in that.
Okay, thank you. Go on, go ahead.
Thank you. Variance number 4 and 5, it relates to the wall height. The proposed third story being set back, the extent of first and second floor, the actual wall height is at 6.7 meters, which is less than allowable height. And by us pushing back the third floor to reduce the SSI, also gave us a chance to reduce the massing and minimize the impact to adjacent property, the first and second floor in line, but bringing in the third floor. Variance number 6 has to do with the existing front yard setback. That is not changing from the current condition. And similarly, the variance number 7 also has to do with the current existing setbacks to the dwelling being taken to those points where we're not encroaching any further to the setbacks as current. I believe that through the study of previous decisions and the area that is stable and ever changing, we believe that our proposal fits in the character neighborhood, and we ask the Committee of Adjustments to consider the approval revised variance for number 3.
Thank you. Panel, any questions? All right. Any comments, or do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, if I may ask a question of the applicant. With regard to the parking space at the rear,
yes,
that's a proposed one, presumably, so you don't have a parking space. You know, when one looks at the Google view from the Foxley Place,
yes,
there's a very large tree currently at the edge of on the corner of the property. So I'm going to assume that that tree is one that remains.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the tree may need to come down. That is because it's actually considered a weed. It's a large tree that has been, I guess, allowed to grow over time. The existing area to the south of us is a full asphalt parking area put in asphalt, and that tree is grown along the property line. It is sort of in decay. We have had an arborist come out on site to assess the condition of the tree to see if it could sustain the injury. We're working with forestry, and we will have to apply for that. And then through the parking space, we're looking at leaving it as a permeable surface, gravel surface. That if we can't keep the tree, we'll be able to do so, but we are not sure at this time.
Thank you. Yeah, I was concerned also about the materials, but I see it says gravel base, so that's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions? Do we have a motion? Yes, Sahir.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm in a position to be able to support this motion. I think there's a condition, forestry 2 condition, and there's planning conditions related to variance number 3, and also a request that the construction be largely in keeping with the plans. So I think I'm able to support the application. I would like to move a motion with those 2 conditions in mind.
All right, I think you also have to say as amended.
As amended, yes.
All right, thank you. Do we have a seconder, Aaron? All right, all in favor? You have your approval, sir. Thank you. Number 9, 133 Beatrice Street. Purpose of this application to alter the existing 2 1/2-story semi-detached triplex by constructing a rear second-story addition, a partial rear third-story addition with a deck and a front second-story balcony. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant and support from 127 Beatrice Street. Thomas Rylett.
Hi, Thomas, you've been unmuted.
Good morning. It's Thomas Rylett.
Mr. Rylett, are you there?
Oh.
Thomas,
Hello?
you've been unmuted.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, but you're very...
Okay, great.
All right, thank you. Can we have your name and address for the record, sir?
Yes, good morning. Thank you. My name is Thomas Rylett, 133 Beatrice Street. I'm one of the owners of the property.
Okay. Can we have just a very brief idea of what you're doing here?
Yep. So we're building on top of the existing addition to the rear of the house so that the second and third floor units will be sort of more well laid out and more livable. That's also, we're straightening the walls on the north side of the third floor to match the walls, of similar houses on the street, like 135 Beatrice Street and other homes on the street. We're not changing the footprint of the building. We're also going to, we're improving the landscape around the house. Right now, it's entirely concrete pavers and interlocking brick, and we're going to be removing that to add soft landscaping and sort of hopefully planting some native species to help sort of bird and insect population. We're also, going to it's a 100-year-old house. We're going to be, this isn't in the variances, of course, but we're going to be updating the electrical system, adding energy efficient windows, things like that as part of it.
How many units are there in this building?
There are currently 3 units.
Right, okay. All right, panel, any questions? Yes, here.
I was just wondering if the applicant could speak to variance number 2 and 3, soft landscaping.
Yeah, so right now we are going to, there is essentially no soft landscaping at the front and back. We're going to increase the soft landscaping as much as we can given the existing footprint.
So in the case of variance number 2, the 35.8%, that's not existing, that's what will be, is that?
Yeah, that's what will be.
And the same thing for number 3?
Yeah.
21%. Just with regard to, when I look at the site plan, your rear yard, with me, I'm just going to move my screen to that. It looks like a walkway between the existing garage and the house. It's sort of a T-shaped area with lawn on one side and lawn on the other side. Is that presumably a pathway that either exists or will be created?
I mean, right now the entire backyard is interlocking brick, so we're going to remove that and then add a walkway of some sort of pavers between the building and the back steps and the garage door.
Could we, would you be okay with a condition to indicate that walkway, the proposed walkway in the rear yard, be produced of permeable materials?
Yep, like a permeable paver or gravel or something like that. Yep, that's fine.
Thank you.
Any other questions, panel? Okay, do we have any comments or do we have a motion? Nimrod?
I think what's being proposed will be an improvement, certainly in terms of the soft landscaping at the front and the rear from what is there today. And I think that the variances are minor, and I would move approval with the condition that the walkway in the rear be of permeable material.
All right, Zahir, you second that? All right.
Yes.
All in favor? Have your approval. Thank you, sir. Number 10, 242 Coxwell Avenue. The purpose of this application is to alter the existing one-story building by constructing an outdoor patio for the existing ground floor restaurant. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, correspondence from community planning, email correspondence from community planning, and support from 231 Ashdale Avenue. Jerry Tisler.
Morning, members of the committee. Jerry Chisler here. We're with MHBC Planning located at 242 Brand Street, Burlington, agent for the owner.
Okay, sir. Thank you. You better give us a presentation because there's some opposition.
Certainly. So the proposal here is to establish an outdoor patio, which would serve potentially 2 restaurants. And it's located on a private lane, which you sort of see in the middle of your screen here. It's a long rectangular area. The patio will be approximately 176 square meters. And it'll be on top of this private lane, which was previously historically used to accommodate 4 parking spaces. The lane is somewhat substandard, so it's not very functional for the purposes of parking. And so the proposed variances today are to reduce the parking from the 4 spaces that are required, which were legally existing on the property, down to 0, and then to establish a private patio, a commercial patio that's within 13.4 meters of a residential zone. And I'm not sure, I did not actually see the letter of opposition, so I'm not sure what the concerns were, but we do have a parking study submitted in support of the parking reduction, as well as a noise and acoustical study to support the patio as well, which indicated that the changes in sound levels are imperceptible.
Okay, so you will have an opportunity to rebut whatever the opposition has to say.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so panel, any questions? Yes, Nimrod?
I do have a question. And I understand this was approved by committee 3 years ago and for a period of 3 years. And during that time, have there been any complaints relating to the operation of this?
So during that period, there were no complaints, but the owner was not actually able to establish the patio due to business reasons during that time.
All right, thank you.
Yes, Aaron?
Just want to confirm you have read the notes and conditions proposed by planning staff?
Yes, we have, and we're okay. I believe
all tied to the plans and the limit of setbacks. Okay. Great.
Okay. Sarah Sasso and Jean Lavigueur.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I've tried to contact them by phone and email, and I was unable to locate them. However, the person in interest is in attendance.
Okay, Chris Him Chan.
Hi, Chris. You've been unmuted. Chris, you've been unmuted.
Chris Chan, are you there? So could you, can you phone him or something? Oh, he is there.
Hi, Chris, you've been unmuted.
Hello?
Chris, are you there? You've been unmuted.
Hello, Chris. Perhaps try and mute and unmute yourself and see if that works.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes. Can we have your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, this is Chris Chan. I'm the homeowner of 277 Rhodes. I'm adjacent to Godspeed Brewery.
All right, can we have your comments?
Yeah, so I just want to know just a little bit more in detail about the sound levels. I did read the report, and from what it summarized it's kind of summarizing the existing architecture already, but in terms of building this new courtyard with a patio, and I do see that the map, there's going to be additional seating. What are the expected sound levels that is going to, as a result of this new courtyard?
Is that your only question?
That's correct, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tischler?
Hello there. Yes. So in the noise study, it does indicate that the sound level increases will be about 3 decibels higher than currently as a result of the additional seating. The noise study does note that there are a number of sound sources on the site, which includes rooftop mechanical units that are on the roofs of the existing buildings, and that it does account for a maximum worst case scenario of 94 people in attendance on the patio, with, as it notes, half of that speaking at elevated levels. And that the study does note that the 3 decibel increase is not considered to be noticeable.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chan, do you have any further questions?
So you mentioned about speaking levels, it's going to increase that by 3 decibels. Will the rooftop or the courtyard itself also include music? Will the restaurant be, providing type of music that may increase those levels as well?
No, so any music or outdoor entertainment is not actually permitted outdoors, so that won't be it won't be permitted on the patio.
Got it. Thank you so much. That's all the questions I have, Chair.
All right, thank you. Panel, do you have any questions? Okay, do we have any comments, or do we have a motion? Sahir.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is an application from what I just heard previously approved. And in fact, the specific site is quite an improvement over what existed previously. The other point to note is that it is sandwiched between 2 buildings, so a building structure. So I think that mitigates problems for neighbors as well. So I'd be quite happy to move a motion. I believe it's just a planning condition with regard to sound. Keeping that in mind, I'd be quite happy to move a motion to approve.
All right, so I just wanted to comment that the previous approval was for a 3-year period, and usually that's done as a trial to see whether it's going to be acceptable. I think probably because of COVID, the patio didn't get done, and so there's been no trial period. So, but your proposal is not time limited.
Not time limited, and just based on also keeping in mind planning condition. I think that one refers to sound levels.
Right, thank you. All right, Sahir. And
Yeah,
not
I also
Sahir,
just wanted.
Nimrod.
Yeah, just wanted to add some comments. I note that community planning also sets out limits on the operation and tying it to the plans as well. So I think the community planning conditions are useful and would help mitigate any issues. And I would second any motion for approval.
All right, all in favor? Have your approval, sir, thank you. Number 11, 19 Humber Trail. Okay, just a minute, I have to go to my next.
Yeah, we have more files this time.
Yeah. Okay, number 11, 19 Humber Trail. Purpose of the application, alter the existing two-story detached dwelling by constructing a rear ground floor addition, a new front porch, a new rear patio, and a new rear basement walkout for access to a secondary suite. With this
Hello. Hello, you
Yeah.
hear me?
Okay, yeah, we can hear you. Can you just wait till I finish introducing the matter? Thank you. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, 3 form letters in support from Weatherall and Humber Avenues. So, yes, George Regira.
Yes. I'm the applicant for the homeowner from Studio Ray.
Okay, can we have your name and address for the record, sir?
My name is George Reguera from Studio Ray Architectural Consulting, and I'm representing the homeowner in the 19 Humber trial.
Okay, so could you just give us a very brief presentation, as there's somebody on in interest. I don't know whether they're opposing, but they're need to speak, and we need to hear your brief presentation.
Okay, it's just an extension in the rear facade of this property, and we like to accommodate a secondary unit for a secondary unit entrance. And just because that, we like to propose a walkout with a soft landscape, and just extend the main floor of this property in order to accommodate really basically a powder room and a bigger kitchen. This is it.
Okay. Any questions, panel? Okay, Jordan Schwan and Tabitha Valeri.
Hi, Jordan, you've been unmuted.
Hi, Jordan Schwan, homeowner for 48 Weatherall Street. I just wanted to understand what implications a secondary suite would have on parking in the area, and more specifically, is the right of way to the east side of the property permitted for parking?
Mr. Reguera? Are
yes.
those all your questions, Mr. Schwan?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Reguera?
Yes, we have an existing garage in the property, and this is going to be existing to remain, really basic. And also, we allow to parking temporary in that driveway. If this is inconvenience, or we want to get, probably if the tenant requests a parking permit, we should find a way to accommodate that situation, if this is the concern.
All right. So there's one authorized parking spot, and that's not changing, and you don't need a variance for that. Is that correct?
It's correct.
Okay. Thank you. All right, panel, do you have any other questions? All right, do we have comments? Do we have a motion? Nimrod?
Yeah, there's only two variances before us, and I believe they're both minor in nature, and I would move approval with no conditions.
All right, do we have a seconder? Sahir, all in favor? You have your approval. Thank you, sir. Number 12, 33 SHUDELL Avenue.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is the one that's, there's a request for deferral.
Yes, I was just going to introduce it and then deal with the deferral. So the purpose of the application to alter the existing two-story detached dwelling by constructing a one-story front addition and enclosing the existing front porch. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, correspondence from community planning, and a report from urban forestry, opposition from 35 SHUDELL Avenue. Ryan Love.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, if you speak up a little louder, we can hear you.
Okay, so my name is Ryan Love, ARA Architects, 625 Church, Suite 600, representing the owner.
Yeah. So you're asking for a deferral, sir?
Yes, the owners ran into an unexpected issue with the neighbors, so they're requesting a deferral to the new year, so they can try to resolve it.
Okay. Panel, do you have any questions, or do we have a motion for a deferral? Is it here?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move motion to defer. I think it can only be positive experience if the issues are resolved between neighbors.
All right, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Aaron? All right, all in favor? You have your approval for a deferral. Thank you, sir. Number 13, 1175 Dovercourt Road. The purpose of this application to construct a two-story garden suite at the rear of the existing three-story detached dwelling. The existing parking spaces will be removed. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant. We have email correspondence from Transportation Engineering, and correspondence in opposition from 1176 Dovercourt, and a 10-signature petition from properties on Delaware Avenue and Dovercourt Road, and 19 form letters in support from properties on Dovercourt. Okay, so Adam Brander.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members.
Good morning. Can we have your name and address for the record, sir?
My name is Adam Brander, and my address is 49 Bolton Avenue in Toronto. I'm the agent and the architect for the proposal at 1175 Dovercourt.
Okay, so you better give us a presentation because there's opposition.
Certainly. This proposal, as mentioned, is for a garden suite on a major street. I'm here to request relief for 4 variances. I'd like to speak to the variance that relates to parking first, referencing how the bylaws were enacted that relate to ancillary dwellings. First, laneway suites were introduced. These were introduced in Toronto East York District only, and their bylaw included a clause that when adding a laneway suite, parking requirements were removed on the main dwelling, whether it's a single family or multi-family dwelling. This was a consideration for physical space on lots, but also a forward-thinking approach to more transit-oriented city core. When garden suites were introduced, their application was widespread, reaching to all corners of the amalgamated city of Toronto. And so due to this remote instances, there was hesitancy on removing parking requirements across the board. If we look at this particular site in the Toronto downtown core, its location on a major street, its candidacy for no need for parking is clear. If we can go to support material sheet 2, just down one slide, it reflects excellent transit conditions, also bikeability and walkability. Further, should vehicle parking be needed, permit parking confirms there are 359 overnight street parking permits that are not being used currently in the area. And if we just flip down to support material sheet 3, council has adopted that this variance be removed altogether, and so its applicability is momentary until the appeal period fully expires. Another variance looks at soft landscaping for the rear yard. This variance is required due to a site condition that is highlighted back up on support material sheet 1. If we could flip up there, there's a right-of-way that covers a 2.43 meter wide by 20.3 meter long portion of the rear yard, a significant area covering 49.1 square meters of the rear yard. Technically, as the right-of-way is fully on the property. Exclusive of this, the rear yard landscaping would be 59.5% greater than the 50% requirement, and in keeping with the intents of maximizing soft landscaping, this driveway is proposed this driveway access is proposed to be maintained as is for the exclusive use of the neighbors moving forward. A point of clarity, which might help understanding on the rear yard setback. I saw that the notice had been updated and highlighted. The proposed garden suite is set back the required 1.5 meters as required by the bylaw. There's a proposed modest outdoor single step landing at the door at the rear that the zoning examiner reflected as the variance, and it's located adjacent to a neighbor's fence and their existing storage garage. The last variance is a height variance of 25 centimeters. Support material sheet 4 highlights this. It's proposed fully within the angular planes. There's a respectful approach to adding a modest amount of height. It's found that the angular planes that dictate these structures require some additional depth of roof structure in order to achieve these building forms. And so the height is a small ask to fit deeper structure while maintaining usable headroom inside. The owners, on receiving a letter of concern posted to the application file, had reached out to discuss concerns and set up a Zoom meeting chat as a forum, but no participants had got involved. And with support for the variances as described as minor, in keeping with the general intent of the bylaws and the OP, desirability for more dwellings and housing options, appropriateness of no on-site parking at this location at this time, and some support from the community, these would be my initial submissions in support of the application.
All right, any questions, panel? Nimrod?
So I'm just trying to understand that right of way. If you can just go over again what it's used for and what material is it made of?
Certainly. The right of way is for the use of the property that for the parking spaces that are now being removed. So moving forward, it's for the exclusive use of some of the neighbors that don't have lane access at the rear of the property. So it's basically a shared driveway. It's proposed to be maintained as is, as asphalt for those uses.
So your client won't be using it at all?
No, the use will be reduced from 3 parking to 0 use.
Right. Yes, Sahir.
Yeah, just with regard to variance number 1, the soft landscaping reduction from the required to the proposed. From that same drawing that you're looking at, there's a faint outline of what I detect to be the existing garage within the outline of the proposed garden suite. Am I correct in reading that that would have been the existing garage previously?
Through you, Mr. Chair. There's 3 existing at-grade parking spaces on the site. So it roughly consisted of a little less area than the proposed garden suite. So there's a net change of about 10 square meters.
So in other words, the garden suite is larger than the 3 parking spaces that you mentioned?
Yeah, there's a small net increase in coverage.
Assuming you didn't have that increase, what would the soft landscaping look like? What percentage would you be looking at?
Brander?
I'm just looking to the previous notice. It was 42% previously.
So you're basically, if would I be correct in saying that it would have been 42% existing, now you're asking for 32%?
Yes, that's correct.
I always find that to be a bit of a challenge when you have that reduction of soft landscaping, and we're densificating, but at the same token we're reducing opportunities for soft landscaping. So I do find that a problem.
All right, any other questions? Okay, Sarah Fasulo.
Here.
Hi, Sarah, you've been unmuted.
Thank you.
Can we have your name and address for the record, please?
Sarah Fasulo, 576 Delaware Avenue North.
All right. Can we have your comments, please?
My name is Sarah. I am the owner of 576 Delaware Avenue North. My property, along with 9 other properties, have parking at the back, and they all back onto this private laneway. There are only 9 people who utilize this private laneway, and all of us oppose this development and requested variances, except one neighbor whom we could not reach. She is renovating her property and doesn't live at the property, so we could not reach her. Today I've been asked to speak on behalf of all the owners who back onto the laneway, exclusive of that one neighbor, as well as a neighbor that backs directly onto this garden suite. I was to speak on behalf of a tenant that resides at 1175 Dovercourt, but he has since asked to be removed from our petition, so I will not be speaking on his behalf today. I would just like to point out that the 18 or 19 letters of support that the applicant has, none of those signatures are any owners that back onto this laneway, nor do any of those signatures, none of them are affected in any capacity by this garden suite. I would just like to make that very clear. Moving on to requested variance number 2, which is to reduce the setback. I understand from the architect that this has now been pushed back to the required 1.5 meters. However, the owner at 574 who backs onto this garden suite has asked me to express his serious concerns over privacy and security and noise. As the architect said, there is a door and windows on the east side of the garden suite that will be looking directly into his backyard. There's noise issues there if they're coming in and out at all hours of the day. So he's very concerned about having the access abutting his property line. There's also a tree declaration noted in the file which says there is no private tree on 574 Delaware, but there in fact is, and it should be investigated by urban forestry, because if you measure from 1.4 meters up, the diameter is 34.4 centimeters, and so that falls under the private tree bylaw. And so the owner at 574 has asked that urban forestry is brought in and investigates the impact this garden suite will have on that tree. If you bring up the proposal or the petition I submitted, you will see photos that I've included on there. You can go to the second last page where you'll see a photo of the laneway and my car. So this is speaking to variance 4, the removal of the requested 3 parking spaces. The applicant wants to remove the 3 parking spaces and build the garden suite in its place. And as mentioned, it appears it's 10 square feet larger than the 3 parking spaces. He wants this garden suite to abut the right-of-way line at the turning point of the L-shaped laneway. And so you'll see from the photo, this is a very small private laneway. There's only one way in and one way out. And so 8 owners have to use the laneway, that turning point right there, to exit the laneway. And using a measuring tape, we measured it all out. We all tried to get out and make that tight turn. If the garden suite extends to the right-of-way line, nobody will be able to get out. The turn is too tight. I do not know how transportation signed off on this. I don't know if they just look at it from an access from Dovercourt, but nobody can make that turn. So essentially, to summarize, all of the owners backing onto this laneway, except one whom we could not reach, object to these variances. In particular, variance 2, as there are privacy and security and noise issue concerns from the owner at 574, with the entrance and windows being on the east side of the garden suite. We need urban forestry to be investigating the private tree on the property at 574, and removing 3 parking spaces and extending the size of this garden suite to that right-of-way line will prevent the owners from being able to exit their backyard, their parking areas. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Brander?
Certainly. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, I may have missed it, but is variance number 2 deleted?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair, variance 2 is still technically applicable. The council has passed a decision in favor of replacing that bylaw clause, so it would not be applicable, but it's a few moments still away from being fully in effect. And yeah, if I could just provide some responses to the opposition. Just to clarify, there was no pushback of the garden suite. It was just a wording that was incorrect on the notice. There was mention of a tree. We referred to a legal survey on the regarding the tree that established it was 0.2 meters in diameter and therefore not a tree protected bylaw tree. But should the tree have grown since that instance to the dimension that the opposition mentions, we remeasured it and verified that the laneway suite remains outside of that zone, so the tree protection remains intact. There was mention of privacy concerns for the neighbor to the rear. However, there's a 3.5 meter approximately tall shed that buffers any privacy concerns in that direction sufficiently, we feel. The removal of the parking spaces actually improves the access for the neighbors with less congestion on the laneway, as alluded to. The right-of-way is maintained as is for access and as the right. As mentioned, transportation signed off on this. We'd also refer to driveway width minimums for the zone for 569-2013 that are a minimum of 2.0 meters and a maximum of 2.6 meters, which this 2.43 meter access fits appropriately within. And perhaps part of the reason why transportation sees no issues with the application, even though it's not the nature of the application. In regards to the comment on soft landscaping, we understand that there are no surface coverings for this type of right-of-way that would qualify and be desirable for soft landscaping, but the owner is agreeable to providing porous paving should the committee deem this appropriate. It's felt that perhaps the neighbors would be less inclined to support porous paving for additional access concerns that are associated with that. Typically, we see the porous paving as better applied to low use areas like parking, surface parking areas and things of that nature, but open to the possibility there.
So, Mr. Brander, is this a driveway, is that wholly owned by your client?
That's correct. It's fully within on their property, so it's the full driveway width that's considered part of the property.
Okay, thank you. Any Nimrod?
So is the driveway then considered a laneway in terms of the laneway suite?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, this application had been waiting patiently for garden suites to be initiated because technically there is no laneway here. There's just a right-of-way access. And so there's no laneway. There's just a driveway for a few adjacent neighbors.
I see. All right, thank you.
Yes, Aaron?
I'm just looking at the survey and your site plan. Again, it's just the terminology issue here. So it says lane subject to easement, but you are saying that this is not really a laneway, more like a driveway. And then in your own site plan, you label it as proposed garden suite because you don't think this is a proper laneway. That's why you call it a garden suite. So have you actually talked to the planning staff to come up with the definition of these wordings, or I just want to understand how you decide to go through this route?
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Chair, if we had any frontage on a legal city lane, perhaps an application would have went through earlier that could conform under the previously established laneway suite bylaw. There is no lane here. There's an easement that's also a right-of-way.
I see.
And it's a fully private drive.
So the survey says lane, but it's not really a laneway. It's just a parcel of lot with easement. Okay.
I'm referring to the survey, and I see easement labeled, but surveyors sometimes
right
dually label things.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Panel, do you have any further questions or comments? Nimrod?
No, so I'm just trying to understand then the rear yard setback, and if you can explain why you believe that the 0.3 meters, is that what's being proposed as a rear setback from that garden suite, as opposed to the bylaw requirement is 1.5 meters?
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Chair, if we could refer to the site plan to understand this better. If you could look to the top right corner, there's a dimension of 1.5 meters for the proposed garden suite from the rear line. There's also a small landing that's been indicated at the entry point to the suite. It's an outdoor one-step up landing that the zoning examiner identified, which applies to the setback variance. Should it be contentious, we can just omit the rear setback variance for the landing. But we didn't think it was substantial.
Oh, I see. So the setback of 0.3 meters is to the landing, not to the two-story garden suite building itself.
Correct. The 1.5 meters is as of right.
So the 0.31 setback doesn't affect the driveway or the neighbors exiting from their property. You are, as of right, 1.5 meters.
That's correct.
All right, thank you. All right, any further questions, panel? Okay, do we have any comments? Do we have a motion? Nimrod? I don't know whether you're talking, but we don't hear you.
No, I'm just trying to kind of looking this over. I did have some concerns with the soft landscaping issue, and I'm concerned that the laneway suite is just too large and is actually, I think from what the applicant said, was 10 square meters larger than the existing surface parking spaces, and that then is resulting in a reduction in soft landscaping. So I do have concerns with that soft landscaping variance.
Any other comments? Sahir?
Thank you, Chad. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I think the soft landscaping issue becomes a problem for me because it is larger than the existing 3-car parking area. I've also listened carefully to the presentation by the speaker who is in opposition, and I note that there are a number of people who have signed off to that particular petition that reside in the space behind the proposed unit. I think it's important that people, especially in the city of Toronto, where we have these laneways that are part of our, historical planning structures that have existed. I find this a bit difficult to, and like as my colleague Nimrod said, it seems to be a bit of a large structure in that space. So I am not inclined to support this application as it sits.
So I don't see what the size of the parking area has to do with the garden suite. I don't know that the garden suite is oversized. It's larger, yes, than the parking area, but I don't know whether you have to comply with the parking area size. Got nothing to do with the size of the garden suite. The garden suite is on its own. Whether it's a proper size or not, we don't know. I don't, there's no variance for it, so it's obviously, as of right, a proper size. With respect to the neighbors, their main complaint is they won't be able to turn, but in fact, the garden suite is as of right with respect to the setback from the rear lot line, so I don't know. Yes, things change for the neighbors, but transportation is signed off on it, so I don't see that it's a problem. So I don't, and yes, the soft landscaping is less than optimum, but it may just be the nature of the property. So I would support the application. Aaron?
Yes, I was going to say that, I mean, we have to balance both, issues here. The first one is if we are going to allow a garden suite, the size have to be respectful to what a human or a family to be in. The floor plate right now is about 600 square feet for the footprint of the building. And I think that's not too big. That's a very reasonable or respectful size for a family to stay. If we have to, just for the sake of keeping the soft landscape and reducing the building to a pretty small size, it's not really going to solve the housing problem. So we have to look at both. Is that soft landscape reduction going to be that significant, and that you're going to take out at least, so it won't be a two bedroom units, it will be a 1 bedroom unit. It's going to be a very different building. Or we basically just say, no, this is not a site appropriate for any garden suite. This is not the right location. So that's the direction I'm thinking, and I tend to believe that the size is appropriate. The landscape is not, like, we're not looking at from 50 down to 5%. We're looking at a relatively minor reduction. So I think for that reason, I would like to support this application.
Okay, so do we have a motion?
I guess I'll make a motion to support this application, subject to there's no conditions applied.
Right. Do we have a seconder for the motion? Okay, no seconder. Motion fails. Do we have another motion? Yes, Nimrod?
Yeah, I'm going to move a motion to refuse the variances.
Do we have a seconder for the motion? Say here. All in favor of the motion? All opposed? Aaron? I would support the I would not support the refusal, but I can't vote, so the application fails.
Through you, Mr. Chair, so the application is refused.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next item, number 14474 Palmerston Boulevard. Purpose of this application is to alter the existing 2 1/2 story semi-detached dwelling by constructing a new 2-story rear addition, a new rear deck with stairs, a rear second story balcony, and a rear third story deck, the rooftop of the 2-story addition. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, opposition from five properties on Palmerston Boulevard. Mr. Eagleman.
Yes, good morning, Sir Chair and committee members. David Eagleman, planner here on behalf of the owner, 900 the East Mall Suite 300.
All right, thank you. You better tell us something about this because there's opposition.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So through you, Mr. Chair, before I address the single variance, I would just like to note that no concerns or objections have been expressed by any city departments, including community planning staff. Only one variance is being sought here with this proposal, which I think speaks itself to the appropriateness of the application. Regarding the only variance, which is the proposed FSI, the additional massing on the subject property will be entirely within the rear yard and is consistent with the character of other additions within the neighborhood. The additional floor area will be spread over 3 floors and will have little to no impact on the existing streetscape, considering that the style and character of the existing facade is being maintained. From the street, the proposed additional massing will be practically imperceptible, and the altered dwelling will appear very similar to the existing dwelling on the subject property today. The proposal is also compliant with maximum height, maximum depth, maximum length, all building setback requirements, and all landscaping requirements, which demonstrates that the proposed additional massing will be in keeping with the existing and planned context for the neighborhood. This is a downtown neighborhood, and there have been many other similar or larger approvals for FSI on Palmerston Boulevard and within the broader neighborhood. Some of these include 468 Palmerston, approved at 0.93 times the lot area, 543 Palmerston, approved at 0.92 times the lot area, 415 Palmerston, approved at 1.07, 406 Palmerston, approved at 1.1, and 645 Euclid, approved at 1.45. Additionally, the proposed FSI will result in only an additional 51.35 square meters or 553 square feet of GFA greater than what currently exists on the subject property. As such, the proposed FSI will result in a minor increase to the existing GFA and thus will have little to no impact further than what currently exists, as well as what is contemplated by the bylaw. As I mentioned, this is a downtown neighborhood in close proximity to public transit, as well as other services and amenities, which is an appropriate location for an increase in density. So based on the provided justification, I'm of the opinion that this proposal fits in with both the existing and planned context, is consistent with the redevelopment trends along Palmerston Boulevard and the broader neighborhood, and for these reasons, I believe the application represents good planning and meets the 4 tests under Section 45(1). I will be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Panel, any questions? Nimrod?
How many residential units are in the building now?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, the existing dwelling is currently a single-family semi-detached dwelling. So it is currently 1 unit, and we are proposing an additional unit. So the resulting number of units would be 2 units in total in the dwelling.
So I noticed that the plans seem to indicate there's a lot of bedrooms on all the floors. I think, how many total bedrooms are there going to be?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. So the main unit, which occupies the ground floor and the basement, will have 8 bedrooms, and the second unit, which occupies the second floor and the third floor, will have 6 bedrooms. So I understand it is there are a lot of bedrooms, but the intent here is to accommodate larger families within these units.
Thank you.
All right, will the owner be occupying a unit?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is something I would have to confirm. I don't have the answer to that at this time. So I won't be able to answer that question right now.
So I think the opposition considers, from what I read in the letters, considers that the intention is to operate a rooming house here. And you say it's to accommodate larger families. How do you rationalize 8 bedrooms and 6 bedrooms for, you know?
Yes, thank
Seems
you,
a lot
Mr.
of
Chair.
bedrooms even for a large family.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, I will note that there is no variance pertaining to the number of bedrooms, and the bylaw doesn't restrict the number of bedrooms. So the proposal here is to create a secondary suite within the existing semi-detached single-family dwelling, and so legally there will be only 2 units. It is not the intention to operate this as a rooming house, and if it is operating as a rooming house, that would be in contravention to this application and in contravention to the bylaws and perhaps the building code as well. So that could be, action could be taken if it is operated as a rooming house with the city, and that could be enforced on. So we are not dealing with a rooming house through this application today. It is for an additional unit, a secondary suite, and as I mentioned, there's no restriction in the bylaw on the number of bedrooms that is permitted. So that's my rationale.
All right, thank you. Panel, any further questions? Okay, Susan Beaver.
Hi, Susan. You've been unmuted, and you may turn on your video.
Okay. Hi, my name is Susan Beaver. I am the co-owner with my husband of 476 Palmerston Boulevard. Meant to say good morning. Don't do these kind of meetings too often. I have some concerns being on the north side of the semi-detached house, which I've summarized in a note, but I'll bring them up again. But I do want to say that the owner of the house attempted contact yesterday with my husband. Otherwise, he has not attempted any contact with us about his intention. And unfortunately, my husband, both of us are physicians, and he was in a clinic. He couldn't answer the question. And the owner of 474 also tried to call again yesterday evening, but my husband sadly had forgotten we had a meeting that we had to attend. Then it was too late. Otherwise, I've had no contact with this owner. So our concerns, of course, are 14 bedrooms is like a lot of bedrooms. And that, I don't know what I mean, we have concerns of what his intention is. These are big houses, and even without the addition, could be readily divided into 4 units, or certainly 2 units. So we have concerns about the number of bedrooms and then the number of people that brings. on a semi-detached house in downtown Toronto, both in terms of the infrastructure of the city and utilities, etc. Then I'm on the north side of the house and my semi-detached. And so I also have another concern. I've spent a lot of time in my garden, have great concern about green space. And I have planted a birch tree that unfortunately has 3 trunks. At its base, if we were in a different city, this would be protected as a tree that's like 41 centimeters in diameter. But because of how the city of Toronto looks at trees, it has 3 separate trunks. So with that, I could not get urban forestry involved. So instead, I contacted an arborist because any digging will affect the roots of this tree. It is very close to the fence line. And you can see his report in terms of what he recommends at the very least. If urban forestry saw me, they would recommend a bigger area. If my tree were protected, as it is in other jurisdictions. Then I think the third thing is the amount of light. This is like a 2.5-story building on my fence line. I have, like, my windows are 17 inches from what's now going to be this building. And because I'm on the north side, I will be shadowed. My backyard will be shadowed and my house itself will be shadowed quite substantially with the 17-foot addition. I wasn't thinking, but as I've listened to the meeting, there is the addition of a deck. I don't know what he has planned in terms of the material, but if that deck is covered by wood, then that's like a 3-story addition for my backyard. So I'm asking that my tree be taken into account. Plus, there is another tree further down, if he has an idea of a laneway house in the backyard. That's a boundary tree. I have heard no contact from him about this boundary tree. And I would ask first that it not be allowed, that they redesign this appropriate to the neighborhood. Like, there's one thing about increasing density. I'm all for that, absolutely. There's a whole other thing about running a rooming house, which potentially could hold 28 people, if not more, in this little space. Then I would like my trees taken into account. Then the third thing is I'd like a shadow study. Like, what is this going to mean in terms of my property? Because his addition is on the property line. So those are my concerns.
All right, thank you. Panel, any questions? Okay, Graham Lewis and Kelly Dobbin.
Hi, Kelly, you've been unmuted.
Hi, hi, Chair, Mr. Chair. This is Kelly Dobbin speaking at 472 Palmerston Boulevard. I'm just waiting to see if my partner Graham can sign on. He was prepared to speak.
He was going to speak?
Yes, he's going to speak. Here he is. Thank you.
Hi, Graham, you've been unmuted.
Yeah, okay, so thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairperson, members of the committee. Kelly, I'll be speaking on behalf of Kelly Dobbin and myself, who are at 472 Palmerston on the south side of the south property to 474.
All right, can we have your name for the record, please?
Graham Lewis.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, so the variance today is, as I understand, for the addition of the square footage, but also for the change in use from a single-family home to a duplex. And my first comment is sort of based on the applicant's disclosure for the true intended use of the property. If you look at the plans showing two-floor units be inserted into the house, you will notice that there is the existence of a quote-unquote wet bar in the on the 2 floors that do not have a kitchen. So I'm wondering about whether this is in fact a quick and easy way to get to the next step, which would be to convert this into a fourplex. Based on previous discussions with the applicant, you know, I know they had disclosed an intended use to apply for a laneway house potentially at some point in the future. And based on a review of kind of other properties that the applicant has under their portfolio, this is a business that they have in multi-unit residential. They have an intensity for densification that is far outstrips what would be normally reasonable and acceptable. And as I understand, have current plans in various stages of application for laneway houses at these other existing properties.
So Mr. Lewis, we deal with the variances before us. We can't deal with speculation.
All right. So based on the application submitted, I'd like to talk about the proposed number of bedrooms and the, you know, we have a long and well-established history of multi-unit residential in the area, as you know. This is a semi-detached property. It's a small property. It's got very narrow side setbacks to our property of 78 centimeters and 14 bedrooms in duplex over 2 units would generate a density which is over 2.5 times what any other property in the area on the street represents currently. If you measure that based on lot size or the GFA of the proposed, this gives a 21 square meters per bedroom, and if you take into account 2 people per bedroom, it's only 10.5 square meters per person, based on what the existing multi-use or multi-unit residential is on the street, which is about 50. Any plans to, and all these comments, of course, are based on not having a laneway house at some point in the future, which would obviously impact a number of other things. It would annex off the laneway from garbage, access to units, and the side setback being so small, it would not conform with fire safety and EMS. There's also the existence of noise and disruption to the neighbors from having 14 bedrooms in this small property. You know, even with the expanded footprint, it still would be very small, semi-detached compared to the other properties on the street. And that is a real concern for us, obviously, because we do share the side walkway with this property as well. So, you know, the proposed plans show a densification which is overly dense, and we're not opposed to density in the city and creating more capacity for people and that, but we have 1,000 units coming up almost into play with the Honest Ed's development, and we have no real understanding of what that impact will be. This semi-detached house being in the middle of the block, attached to one house and abutting ours, having the potential for 28 people, would create a litany of issues, noise, foot traffic, encroachments potentially, and the likes of that. The last point I would like to make is that in the submission there was no indication that there are in fact protected trees on the property, and canopy and green space is important to the downtown core. So we would request that if anything, these protected trees be itemized, and a condition of any approvals would be take into consideration a grossly reduced density of whatever is proposed. It seems based on the existing multi-unit residential, the number of bedrooms for this semi-detached would be more appropriate, about 6 or possibly 8, and that would include the laneway house.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Eagleman?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Through you, Mr. Chair, it seems that a lot of the concerns from the neighbors are based on speculation, specifically that this will be converted to a rooming house illegally. We're not dealing with that today. We're dealing with one variance for FSI for a proposal to convert an existing semi-detached dwelling into a semi-detached dwelling with a secondary suite. There's no intention to convert this to a rooming house. I understand there are a lot of bedrooms, but again, that is to accommodate larger families in this neighborhood. And there are, as I mentioned, there are no restrictions in the bylaw on the number of bedrooms. So theoretically, you could have the same or a very similar amount of bedrooms within the existing semi-detached dwelling, provided that you meet all building code requirements. So the number of bedrooms does not really relate to the single variance that we are requesting. In regards to the tree impacts, this proposal will not be impacting any bylaw regulated trees. So there is no impacts to any trees. And Mrs. Beaver brought up a shadow study. This is a two-story addition on a semi-detached dwelling that is 3 stories in height. The city does not require a shadow study for this scale of development, and it wouldn't be necessary. There was also some speculation about a laneway house, but again, that is not in this application today, and I'm not aware of any plans to construct a laneway suite. And just in regards to the FSI, the actual variance that we're requesting, the proposed FSI is very much in line with what exists in this neighborhood. The average of approvals within this neighborhood, which there are many, is 1.04 times the lot area. So we are actually below the average of approvals. And I did mention some of the approvals on Palmerston Boulevard, but there are many more. If the committee would like me to go through the number of approvals within this neighborhood, I can do that. We are very much in line and below a number of approvals within this neighborhood. So I'm not sure where Mr. Lewis is getting the number that the proposal will have a density that is 2.5 times more than what is on the street. That is incorrect. And as I mentioned in my presentation, we are asking for an increase in GFA of only 553 square feet, greater than what currently exists on the subject property. So it is a very minor increase in FSI in terms of what currently exists. So I think this is a good application. It is a minor application, only one variance for FSI. So those are my comments, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Panel, any questions? All right, any comments? Do we have a motion? Yes, Nimrod.
So I do have some comments. I think what I've learned from this is that there is to be a secondary suite. So an addition of a second unit, and that is not set out in the purpose of the application. And I'm wondering if that purpose should be modified to add that that point in there, that it includes the addition of a secondary suite, so that it's clear what the variances are for. I think the overall FSI is minor, that increase. It seems to be reflective of the surrounding area. But I do have concerns about what really is intended here in terms of just the overall total number of bedrooms, and that if this was to be approved, I would look for a condition to be added that there be a maximum of 2 residential units.
Yes, Aaron.
I just want to say, I fully agree with Nimrod. That's a very good condition to protect the neighborhood, but at the same time, providing more, residential units to the city.
Zahir, did you have any comment?
Just a couple. One is with regard to and I think Nimrod's point about the alteration or amending of the purpose, I think is very important. The other one element is the deck at the third floor level. I believe it's the north and south sides be built at a height of 1.5 meters with a big screening, so provide privacy. The other point that I just wanted to add is it's interesting. I was looking at the company that the ownership company, the Six Properties Partnership Group. There's a website that has that particular name, and they're in the business of renting homes, not dissimilar to the one we're addressing, and many of them are either 3, 4, or 5 bedroom units. This particular proposal, of course, is a bit larger in number of bedrooms. I suspect it may be in keeping with the nature of the properties that they're developing and placing for rentals. I'm not too concerned about that. But I think if we apply certain conditions that Nimrod and Aaron have mentioned, I think that would be appropriate.
All right, thank you. Nimrod, did you want to make a motion?
Sure. So my motion is to approve the variance with also amending the purpose of the application to add.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. First off, your video is off from the committee room. I'm not sure if there's some technical issue there.
Yeah, we have a message on the screen.
Okay. And before we continue, if a condition is being imposed of one primary unit and one secondary suite within the dwelling, then I don't believe we're in a position that we should be amending the purpose, only because that is not what was notified as part of the circulation.
Okay, so just then to approve the variance and to subject to conditions that there be a maximum of 2 units, 2 residential units, that there also be a condition added that the rear, second, and third floor balconies include opaque privacy screening of minimum 1.5 meter height on the north and south sides. Did I miss any other conditions?
And through you, sorry, Mr. Chair, point of just to ensure, we will say maximum 2 residential units, but we will stipulate that it's 1 primary unit and 1 secondary suite within the dwelling.
Sure.
That's good.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Zahir, all in favor? Have your approval. Thank you, sir. Next item is number 1555 Markham Street. And the purpose of this application is to alter the existing 2-story semi-detached dwelling by constructing a rear 2-story addition and to install a secondary suite within the basement, also to construct a 2-story ancillary building, a laneway suite, in the rear abutting the laneway. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, a 9-signature petition in support from properties on Markham and Andrews Avenue, and interest or concern from people on Robinson, Claremont, Beatrice, Markham, and opposition from residents on Markham and Euclid and Ways Lane. Okay, Mr. Eagleman.
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Chair. David Eagleman, planner here on behalf of the owners, 900 the East Mall Suite 300. And through you, Mr. Chair, considering the opposition on this, I can provide a full presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So through you, Mr. Chair, before getting into the variances, I would like to note that no concerns or objections have been expressed by any city departments, including community planning staff. Additionally, we have consulted with surrounding neighbors regarding this application, and while I understand there are concerns from some surrounding neighbors, we have obtained signatures in support of the proposal, as you have mentioned in introducing the application. So regarding variance number 1, which pertains to the front basement walkout, the front basement walkout will be in keeping with the existing character of the neighborhood, considering there are a number of front yard basement walkouts along Markham Street and within the broader neighborhood. This is demonstrated in the submitted neighborhood photos that I've provided, specifically photos number 9 to number 16, and those just show front yard basement walkouts on Markham Street. The front yard basement walkout will have little to no impact on the existing streetscape, and it will also be screened by vegetation that will consist of an evergreen species to ensure year-round screening. Additionally, a front yard basement walkout is permitted for townhouse dwellings, but is not permitted for semi-detached dwellings. Based on a staff report that came out of the EHON work that the city is currently going through, the city proposed to permit front yard secondary suite entrances for townhouses because townhouses result in a built form that makes it difficult to accommodate secondary suites without a front yard basement walkout. City staff also noted within this report that these recommended changes would respect and reinforce the existing physical character because the zones where townhouses are permitted also permit residential building types which may have more than one entrance in the front wall. The existing character of this neighborhood consists of a mix of building types, which include apartment buildings, as well as townhouses, where there are 2 or more front entrances on the main wall. The subject property is also within an R zone, which permits a multitude of building types, some of which are permitted to have more than one front entrance on the front main wall. So regarding variance number 2, which pertains to the proposed building depth, the proposed building depth is a currently existing condition on the subject property, and the proposal will be maintaining that existing condition. If the staff could please pull up photo number 2 of the submitted photos. That photo shows the existing condition on the subject property in terms of the building depth, and shows that the proposal will just be widening the existing building further to the south, which is on the left-hand side of the photo you are looking at. The existing dwelling has a 1-story portion at the rear, which is being maintained, but will be expanded in width and is what is triggering the building depth variance. Additionally, the second floor has an existing depth of only 17.235 meters, and that existing condition is being maintained as well, as the second floor is only being expanded in width to the south, which is the left-hand side again. Regarding variance number 3, which pertains to the addition altering a main wall that faces the street, that variance is required only due to the proposed front yard basement walkout, as well as the new windows along the front main wall. As I discussed in relation to variance number 1, the front yard basement walkout will be in keeping with the existing character of the neighborhood and will be screened by vegetation that will exist year-round, and thus the alteration to the front main wall will have little to no impact further than what the bylaw already contemplates. The basement walkout will also be below grade, and the front main wall of the dwelling will be very similar to the existing character of the front main wall. Regarding variance number 4, which pertains to the length of a lot line for a laneway suite, this variance is more of a technical variance and is due to the unique configuration of the subject property, and specifically the unique character of the rear lot line. The existing condition is shown in photo number 8 of the submitted photos. Currently, there is a lot with a single detached dwelling on it, located immediately abutting the rear lot line of the subject property to the east. This rear lot to the rear of the subject property has created a condition where only 1.49 meters of the total 4.79 meter rear lot line abuts the laneway. As such, this variance is more of a technical, more technical in nature, and if the lot to the rear of the subject property did not exist and the laneway did not divert eastward at the rear, then this variance would not be required for the laneway suite. Further, the laneway suite will front onto the laneway and will be accessed via the laneway, therefore meeting the intent of this requirement. Regarding variance number 5, which pertains to the soft landscaping between the front main wall of the laneway suite and the rear lot line of the subject property, the proposed laneway suite is deficient by only 11.3%, and the laneway suite includes 2 bicycle parking spaces between the front main wall and the rear lot line of the subject property, which are to be constructed of permeable pavers, and the proposed walkway, which provides access to the laneway suite, will also be constructed of permeable pavers. If the proposed bicycle parking spaces were considered for the purposes of calculating this soft landscaping requirement, the proposal would be providing 100% soft landscaping between the front main wall of the laneway suite and the rear lot line of the subject property. So based on the provide justification, I'm of the opinion that this proposal fits in with the existing and planned context, is consistent with the redevelopment trends along Markham Street and the broader neighborhood, and for these reasons, I believe this application represents good planning and meets the 4 tests under section 45.1. So I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
All right, panel, do you have any questions? Okay. With respect to the remaining speakers, I note that we have 2 speakers from 59 Markham Street, 2 speakers from 7 Ways Lane, and 2 speakers from 53 Markham Street. Our policy is that we only allow 1 speaker per address unless they're not living together. I mean, for example, if 59 Markham Street has 2 units, then we would allow speakers from each unit. But if Mr. Evans and Ms. Wilson are living together, then I think you're going to have to, one of you is going to speak, you're going to be entitled to 5 minutes. So Mr. Evans, Ms. Wilson, could you let us know what your situation is, please?
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for letting me speak. So let me just start out by saying that we're not in favor of this, obviously.
Well, Mr. Evans, can I have your name and your address first for the record?
All right, okay. Don Evans, 59 Markham Street.
Okay.
So variance number 4 is worded wrong, and for that reason, I think I would like to have it deferred. If you read it, it says it requires 3.5 meters of laneway access. The wording says the ancillary building will be located 1.4 meters from the rear lot line, which abuts a lane. So those 2 things aren't the same. It's not the same item. And in fact, it's not going to be 1.49 from the lot line. It's only going to be 1.2, and they're supposed to be 1.5. So like right off the bat, this is not accurate. So I feel like, you know, making a decision on whether we're accepting this stuff, I think we should have the proper paperwork. That's sort of my biggest thing. If you can see my letter, page 1, there's a photograph of the laneway access. It's not actually a laneway access. It's a house in a backyard that has a gate onto a lane. That's a big difference. So that would be considered a garden suite or something. If you look at page 3, there's an aerial view of the applicant's backyard, and an aerial view with the actual house in it. And you can see that it is taking up a good bit of the backyard, more than half. So that's not my letter. Keep going. And that's not me either. That's not me either. Keep going. Oh, that's us. If you go back to the first page, please. So this is a picture of the gate. It's a gate. It's not laneway access. There's a big difference. So when he's asking for variance number 4, he's mixing up two different things. So he's actually asking for the laneway access of 3.5 meters to be made into 1.49 meters. That's not laneway access. That's just a little tiny gate attached to the two. It's actually attached to 59 Markham where I live, and it's attached to 7 Ways Lane. So, you know, this variance is very confusing. So next page, please. That's the gate with the building built behind it, taking up. That's what it's going to look like. So next page, please. So this is the aerial view of the applicant's backyard and the aerial view of the applicant's backyard with the house put in it. So it's going to take up 60% coverage. It's a 6.3 meter high building on a 4.5 meter wide property. It's going to be towering over my backyard. The window in that property, the second floor window, is 11 meters from my back window. I realize that we need densification and everything, but that's just not right. So then the next drawing, this is the view of my backyard into his backyard. You can see in the distance the cedar trees, which you're going to hear a lot about, which are not on the tree report. They're not in his backyard. They're in the neighbor's backyard, but they're right on the fence. So anyway, then the next picture shows what it's going to look like after the applicant builds the property. So there it is. There's the house with the window looking in. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the flat deck. I have to say, a lot of the things about their application is great. More windows in the front, go ahead. Put in the basement access, it's a great idea. But you can see the difference between the two pictures. There's a big fence up there, and it's looking into my backyard. They call it screening. I call it a big fence. And there was no shadow study. The tree report is actually inaccurate. So I think that's about all we have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I take it Ms. Wilson's not speaking. So, Mr. Fawcett.
Hi, Lindsay, you've been unmuted. Lindsay, are you there? You've been unmuted.
Oh, hello. Yes, I am here, but I'm here to represent a portion of what John Fawcett wanted to say this afternoon or this morning. So I'm not sure if you want to hear from him first.
No, we're going to hear from, well, if you both speak, you're only entitled to 5 minutes.
I think John should start and then I can finish.
All right, well, let's go ahead, Mr. Fawcett.
Hi, can you hear me?
No, we can't hear you. Please speak into the microphone.
Hi, Hi, John, please unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but it would be better if you spoke into the microphone. We could hear you a little better. But go
Okay.
ahead. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So my name is John Fawcett, and I'm at 7 Ways Lane.
Yes, go ahead.
So 7 Ways Lane is a very unique but tiny 1,100 square foot laneway house directly behind the proposed building site. We share a fence. Ways Lane is a dead-end alley and has no flow-through of traffic. There is only one way in and out. I'm a single dad working in the film industry, and I have lived at this property since 2007. I've raised my kids here. This tiny house is the only thing that I really own. I don't have other properties or big investments. I don't have any room to expand here either. My investment is in my property. My backyard is pie-shaped, and at the largest point, it is no more than 15 feet across. It is tiny, but I have high fences, and I've enjoyed peace here and privacy. I bought this house in 2007 because it felt like a sanctuary. It was private and apart from everyone else. I've come to know my neighbors and enjoy living in this very urban downtown neighborhood. The proposed plan for building suggests a new 21-foot tall structure that is 4 feet away from my fence with windows that look directly into my backyard, west facing, and into my master bedroom and my neighbor's yard, south facing. This house is literally going to be right on top of me. Any privacy that I may have had will be completely gone. I have nowhere to escape to because my yard and house are so small. My kids have grown up enjoying this small backyard as a private escape so that they can be outside. Regardless of whether these windows are frosted or not, I will have a 21-foot tall wall right beside my back fence. I honestly can't believe that my neighbors would be so selfish as to even propose this overbuilt structure with no consideration for me or their neighbors. It is a complete invasion of my privacy and security. In fact, my laneway house doesn't even appear on their plans. In their plans, my lot just looks empty, like there isn't even a house there to consider. Not only this, but by the nature of the very narrow back alley that has to bend around my property, it is impossible to get large trucks, emergency vehicles, or garbage trucks beyond my property at the bend. If a fire were to break out, my house and backyard would take the brunt of the damage, and the emergency vehicles will be parked right in front of my house, blocking access. And where would their garbage bins go? Right outside my front door. The alley is already almost impossible to maneuver in a vehicle on garbage day. Almost my entire life's investment is in my house. I would like to invite my real estate agent, Lindsay Anderson, to speak about how this new house will negatively impact the resale value of mine. So if we could unmute Lindsay.
I'm unmuted. Thank you, John. My name's Lindsay Anderson, 408 Rhodes Avenue in Toronto. Thank you for letting me speak. Just quickly to reiterate what John is saying, and I believe it's very important to take into consideration how this proposal or building would affect the resale value of 7 Ways Lane. As I'm sure we're all aware, laneway properties are not common in the city, and they attract a very specific type of buyer. This property in particular is one of the more unique homes in Toronto. As we know, it's privately tucked away in the cachet of the laneway, 1 street west of Bathurst in the Trinity Bellwoods neighborhood. The draw to this specific type of property is that it appeals only to a very specific buyer, one that realizes these properties are rare, do not come onto the market often, but provide this hidden element and privacy desired while still living in one of the busiest and best Toronto neighborhoods. This property does not sit on a large lot, so the usability of the exterior of the property was very well planned and designed, taking into consideration its surroundings, such as the neighboring properties, trees, etc., for ultimate comfort and exclusivity. And any negative effect of those elements will negatively affect the future resale value of this property. To have a 21-foot wall in a potential buyer's backyard, it's gonna take away any draw, and I just don't feel that this is after all this time, fair to the neighbors, especially my client John, and the special attributes of 7 Ways Lane. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Panel, any questions? Okay, Ryan Keith? Mr. Keith?
Hi, Ryan. You've been unmuted, and you may turn on your video.
So I'm going to respect the committee and have Elizabeth speak on our behalf, but I just wanted to say that most of my concerns are similar to those presented
Well,
by 55.
perhaps you could give us your name and your address first for the record, please.
Sorry, it's Ryan Keith at 53 Markham Street. Our property is 70 Kent's property.
All right, go ahead.
Again, just respecting the committee, Elizabeth Miranda Brown, we live together and she'll be speaking at length, but I wanted to express that most of my concerns are similar to those presented at 55 Markham and 7 Ways Lane. That in particular, I don't believe this is a laneway house. I think it is a house with a gate that has access to the lane, and it's incorrectly stated on the variance. And I would also like, in addition to what Miranda is going to go through, the committee to review my concerns about the underpinning and excavation and our house integrity, having gone through on the other side of our property.
That's not part of our mandate, sir. That's building department, not committee of adjustment.
Okay, so then my point around that and larger point is that I was not approached by the applicant at any point in this process previously to discuss any of the plans. And so I have a number of concerns that haven't been addressed, which I would like addressed with him. And now I'll turn it over to, or I'll leave my comments for Miranda when it's her turn.
Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can. Can we have your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, it's Elizabeth Miranda Brown, and I'm at 53 Markham Street. I do have a letter with you guys that has some pictures you can refer to. As my partner was saying, we were not approached about the project prior to the sign going up at 55 Markham. And no matter what the paperwork says, after seeing all the other proposals that I've seen today, this is a major build. After the sign went up, we did get a text after the sign went up to tell us not to worry, that he's just completing some much needed repairs to his house. I also found out that he's been saying the same story to neighbors, really downplaying what he's doing and mischaracterizing the plans. And because of that, because he hasn't been transparent, we really need the city's help to protect our site from 3 main threats: the threat of flood, the threat of being stared at from both directions, north and south, because they're very narrow lots, and the threat to the root system of our trees, which are not included on the plans. And I guess the 4th threat of losing property value from the hit of all 3 above. Now, what you can't see on these plans is we have 7 18-foot cedars, which span about 17. You can actually see them right here behind me. They span 17 feet, so it's 300 square feet of vertical green space. And it's actually the only green space in the winter in all the yards, as far as the eye can see from north to south. So our cedar grove is the only refuge for birds in this area. And I know it sounds hunky-dory, but and statistics get thrown around all the time, but Audubon just released a report this year that the songbird population in Canada has declined by 80%. And the reason for this is the massive decline is disappearing habitat, chipping away at it. Even small habitats like our 300 square foot cedar grove are vital right now, especially now. I happen to be a little bit of a birder, so I left some pictures that you can see of the rare birds that we get in our yard. But our trees, they're not even on the plans. And I think that's because all of them have 3 or 4 separate trunks. It's quite spectacular, but perhaps they don't, quote unquote, meet the requirement. I want the city to grant us a visit by urban forestry to assess our best option to save these trees. The city's currently spending money to plant trees. Our street and our area has lost many trees in the past year due to the storms.
Ms. Brown, if you're going to contact urban forestry, you shouldn't take up the time of the committee because you've only got about a minute left. So
Well, I'm
please
asking
address the other
Deputy-
issues.
Okay, the risk of flooding. We are vigilant about keeping our drains clear on our property, but the freak rain events means the water rises faster than the drainage can manage. 51 Markham paved over their yard. 7 Ways Lane has patio stones. Behind that, there's the pavement of Ways Lane. Tipping the balance so far in the direction of cement is going to put our property at increased risk for flooding. I support building, but it needs to be balanced with the threat of flood. The 21-foot house proposed is going to look directly into our yard with no buffer. We have a young child. I think it's every parent's worst nightmare to have strangers looking down on their children as they play. When we purchased, we looked at the chance of a laneway house around us, but the gate, the narrow gate at the back of 55, assured us that this wouldn't happen. From my limited knowledge of this whole process, as far as I can tell, the bylaws for 55 that the 55 wants to circumvent are mostly ones that protect nature. We have no problem with 55 increasing the footprint of their existing structure, with him digging down. If he was asking to build taller, we would support that because it doesn't threaten green space or trees. But what he's asking for is like an urban sprawl, except in this micro small lot. And the sprawl that he's asking you to approve is what's destroying so much nature on the site. A more reasonable build would be to increase the density of the footprint as it exists. Save the yard.
Ms.
and it's-
Brown,
Yes?
your time is up. Perhaps you could wrap up now.
Yeah, let's use the existing structures. I would like to ask the committee to reject the laneway house, but approve the rest of what the house is asking.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right, Mr. Eagleman?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Mr. Eagleman, before you start, I just want to point out that I had the same concern about variance number 4, the wording of variance number 4, as Mr. Evans. I don't think it's correct. Perhaps I'm wrong, but I think you should address that issue.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, I was going to address that at the outset of my rebuttal, but yes, I believe Mr. Evans is correct. However, I don't think this should necessitate a deferral because the variance number itself is correct. It's just the wording of the variance should read that the laneway suite is on a lot with a rear lot line abutting a lane of 1.49 meters. Something along those lines should be sufficient, and I think that could just be amended today here because I don't think this should necessitate a deferral. And I would point out as well that variance number 5 is also worded slightly incorrectly. The variance itself is correct, and we brought this to the committee's attention, and they advised that they would fix it without requiring a deferral. Basically, variance number 5 speaks to the landscaping between the rear main wall of the residential building and the front main wall of the ancillary building, the laneway suite, but that variance is actually pertaining to the front main wall of the laneway suite and the rear lot line. So it's the landscaping, the front yard landscaping for the laneway suite, not the landscaping between the laneway suite and the rear wall of the existing house. So I believe both corrections could be made without necessitating a deferral because proper public notice was provided. The variances are accurate in terms of the actual number. It's just the wording of those variances is slightly off. But I'm in the committee's hands in regards to how that can be addressed.
Yeah.
So perhaps, Mr. Chair, if you would like me to address the rest of the comments
Yes,
from the neighbors.
please. Yes, go
Okay.
ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So through you, Mr. Chair, it seems that most of the neighbors are really only concerned with the laneway suite, but we are only seeking 2 variances for the laneway suite, and the landscaping variance is almost practically not even a variance because we're providing 2 bicycle parking spaces that are required for laneway suites, and that will be made up of permeable pavers. And so if those were included, it would be 100% soft landscaping, but because permeable pavers does not count as soft landscaping, that is why we need the variance. There is no other variance for the laneway suite other than the lot line which abuts the laneway, which is 1.49 meters of the actual lot line that abuts the laneway. The laneway suite is compliant with height, setbacks. The proposal itself in general is compliant with all landscaping requirements, save and except for between the front main wall of the laneway suite and the rear lot line. There are no bylaw protected trees that are being injured or removed as part of this application. And the frontage along the laneway is really just an existing condition of the subject property. It's a bit of a unique situation, but the laneway suite will front onto the laneway. It will be accessed by the laneway. Emergency access is provided from Markham Street through to the rear of the property that is shown and demonstrated on the plans. And there are a number of large laneway suites on Ways Lane currently. Mr. Fawcett, he lives at 7 Ways Lane. That is a laneway house or suite on the laneway right next to the subject property. There's another very large laneway suite just next to 7 Ways Lane. Photos of these laneway suites are provided in my submitted neighborhood photos. So this laneway suite will be very much in character with the existing condition of Ways Lane. And it really is a minor application that will be in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. I'll just note that Ms. Anderson brought up some issues related to resale value and this appealing to specific people, but as you know, committee, that is not something that is dealt with by the committee and has no relation to the variances being requested. And just lastly, we did consult with surrounding neighbors. The owner did that consultation, so I can't speak specifically to what was said or discussed or with whom the proposal was discussed, but I do know that surrounding neighbors were consulted. We do have signatures in support of the proposal. So those are my comments, Mr. Chair. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Yes, panel, any questions? Oh, yes, Aaron.
I just want to, I think the biggest concern I have is variance number 4, the reduction of the setback of your laneway suite. I think there's a reason why 3.5 is set up to kind of create a visual or physical buffer zone between neighbors, especially the one behind you. And this basically is a 2 meters reduction, is creating quite some, I would say quite significant impact to the neighbor. So I would like you to explain further why we should approve item number 4. I'm not talking about the overall size, but the proximity to the, like you can shift it to closer to your house, right? If we're just talking about the size, I'm just asking you particularly about the proximity of the laneway suite to the property line.
So Aaron,
yes.
Aaron, before you start, Mr. Engelman, I want to make clear, I don't understand the bylaw requirement the same way Aaron does. I thought it was the laneway suite lot has to abut on a lane for a distance of a minimum of 3.5 meters. The wording of the wording says that it'll be located 1.49 meters from the rear, and I think that's what's making a confusion. But I think actually what it is that it's abutting the laneway for 1.49 meters, not that it's located 1.49 meters from the rear of the lot. So,
Through you, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
you are correct, Mr. Chair, and if perhaps the committee can pull up the site plan so we can clarify this issue. But you are correct, Mr. Chair. It is not, there is no requested variances for any setback related to the laneway suite. The laneway suite is compliant with all setbacks. And so if you zoom in there just to the rear lot line, so you'll see right here, so where it says lot 30, that is Seven Ways Lane, the laneway suite that, or dwelling that is right next to the subject property. And you'll see Seven Ways Lane, their property actually shares a portion of their rear lot line with our rear lot line. And that lot essentially blocks the frontage or of the rear lot line of the subject property onto the laneway suite. And so that is why only 1.49 meters of the 4.79 meter rear lot line actually functionally and technically abuts the laneway. But the proposal will, the laneway suite will be accessed by the laneway and will be accessed through that 1.49 meter frontage per se of the laneway suite. It is essentially a frontage variance, and it is just because of an existing sort of unique situation of the subject property at the rear.
Okay. Do you understand, Aaron?
Mm-hmm. I think it's the angular lot line of lot 30.
Yeah. Okay, panel, any further questions?
But I do have a follow-up question. If you are going to meet the 3.5 meters requirement, where will be your the exterior wall of your secondary suite?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the 3.5 meter requirement cannot be met because of the existing condition of the subject property. It has nothing to do with the setback of the laneway suite. As I mentioned, the laneway suite is compliant with all setbacks, front, rear, and side. It is because the variance is essentially for the frontage of the laneway suite, and because of lot 30, the lot will never have 3.5 meters of the rear lot line abutting the lane, unless lot 7 Ways Lane is demolished and that lot is absolved somehow. The subject property would never meet that requirement of 3.5 meters along the laneway. But functionally, it does, and functionally, the proposal meets the intent of that requirement by fronting onto the laneway and having access via the laneway.
Got it.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, we go into committee, and any comments or a motion? Yes, Nimrod.
I've got a comment. I do have concerns with variance number 4. So the way I understand it, a laneway suite is permitted provided the lot along the laneway is a minimum of 3.5 meters in width. And this is only going to have 1.49 meters, so less than half of its frontage that's required actually fronts onto the lane. So I have concerns that really this is not really meeting the intent of the bylaw. It is so undersized.
Well, it may be that, maybe it should be called a garden suite. I mean, before we didn't have garden suites, so I don't, the garden suite doesn't have to abut a laneway at all. This has some frontage abutting the laneway, albeit smaller than the bylaw requires, but it still gives access to the property. And it's not because, it's because of the configuration of the adjoining lots. I don't see it as a real big problem. did you want
I
to
have a
say something?
question to Nimron. So from your experience, what is the intent of this bylaw that you need that 3.5 meter? Is it a planning policy or some sort of bylaw to make sure that there's a certain standard for how a secondary fish should be, or is it a restriction on a particular lot like this? That, okay, if a lot with this kind of butting situation, it shouldn't have a secondary street. Is that the intent? Because I just want to know from a planning point of view, how would you look at it?
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is the first time I've seen this minimum of 3.5 meters. I don't know whether when the bylaw was, when this bylaw was passed, I assume we didn't have garden suites at that point. So in order to qualify as a laneway suite, I guess they wanted to have not just a sort of corner of the lot touching the lane, abutting the laneway, but a substantial portion of the lot abutting the laneway. But I don't know, once the garden suites bylaw was passed, whether it makes a difference at this point, whether it's whether we call it a laneway suite or we call it a garden suite, and I don't know. In that case, I don't know what effect this has from a planning perspective to say you have to abut a laneway by a minimum of 3.5 meters. You can build, I mean, there's appropriate space to build the house and everything else, and in other respects it complies. So I don't see this as an insurmountable thing, and I don't know whether it was just because we were only allowing laneway suites at the time the bylaw was passed that they wanted this abutment to be a reasonable amount of meters. Yes, Nimrod.
So under the garden suite bylaw, if this was considered a garden suite, would it be permitted as it's being shown? I don't know.
I don't know either, but I think so. I think it doesn't have to have a connection with a laneway. And as far as I know, laneway suites and garden suites have the same or similar requirements in terms of size and height, etc. Yes, Sahir?
Just on the same question, would a garden suite be a structure that is only accessible through the front of the home, for example, through a driveway that exists from the front of the home rather than a lane? And a laneway suite is specifically accessible from a lane. So, you know, whether this qualifies as a garden suite or a laneway suite, that I think becomes a bit of a...
I look at it and I would like to support it, but what I'm worried about is a laneway, meaning that a laneway house means there are other neighbors sharing that lane. That means this is a public space being used, and it is situated in between or among different neighbors. It's a shared walkway. It's like a common corridor, right? Whereas a garden suite is back to back. There's no such issue. So I would like to see that as a garden suite, but it is not really, because it has a different context and different impact to the neighbors. And that's the reason why I want to see the reduction of this 3.5 to 1.49. How would that affect the neighbors? But I think the applicant, clarified that, and thanks for that information, and the chairman. I'm just trying to look at any other technical issues here that I might not aware of before supporting the application.
Well, I think, there's an entrance from the laneway, so that there is access from the laneway, and you're right, it has to be a laneway suite because it doesn't, it is on the laneway, it's just a reduced abutment. It's not, so he can't drive a car in there, for example, at 1.49 meters, but he still has access to the laneway house. So I think the applicant described it as a technical issue, and maybe it is. Maybe it's because it was 3.5 meters, but it didn't serve a real purpose except to have some relationship to the laneway. Okay. All right, anybody have any other comments or questions, or do we have a motion at this point? Yes, Nimrod.
You know, given our discussion and the relation with garden suites, you know, I think I come around to think then that, you know, this would be appropriate, and that there be a condition added dealing with opaque privacy screening on the second floor deck, minimum 1.5 meter height, north and south sides to ensure privacy. And I would then move approval of the variances with that condition.
All right, do we have a seconder? Aaron, thank you. All in favor? Have your approval. Thank you, sir. Number 16, 4 MOUTRAY Street. And the purpose of this application to alter the existing two-story semi-detached dwelling by constructing a complete third-story addition and a rear one-story addition. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant. We have correspondence and support from 6 MOUTRAY and interest or concern from another party without an address. Michael Scott.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Certainly, sorry, I just got some static. My name is Michael Scott. I'm the architect and the agent for the owner.
And your address, sir?
In Toronto.
Excuse me, I spoke while you were giving your address and I didn't catch it. And, so perhaps you could just repeat your address?
Certainly, it's 18 Linwood Avenue, Toronto.
Okay, thank you. Now, there is someone of interest who's on the line, so perhaps you could give us a brief presentation?
Sure. I'll be fairly brief because I believe the interest was mostly related to constructability issues rather than zoning. But essentially, this is a semi-detached house with a fairly high peaked roof, which is not occupied. It's an attic, and in fact, it's shared between the two halves of the semi. There's no dividing wall dividing the attic into two parts. Our proposal is to alter the roof line on our side of the semi-detached so that we can have a fully occupied third floor. We won't be increasing the peak of the roof. The peak height will remain the same, but along this side of the property, it's the west side, which is against the alley, we'll be constructing a wall so that we can have a flatter roof and full head height for a third floor. As part of that, we'll be building a new party wall, or extending the party wall that ends at the second floor ceiling up to the existing roof peak to separate the attic into our new third floor and the roof peak for the adjacent property. We're also proposing to slightly enlarge the existing one-story addition at the back of the house, which is basically, it contains a stair that goes down from the first floor and then down to the basement. And it's just so small that the stair is far from code compliant. We were going to enlarge it slightly in order to put a code compliant stair in. I would add that work is actually, like if we weren't doing the third floor, the work to do the to slightly enlarge the first floor addition is as of right. I don't think there are any variances associated with that. I think that's a brief summary. I would add as well that because the property is against a lane and because there are other 2.5 or 3-story properties both to the west and to the east, I don't think the additional bulk on top of the roof will adversely affect anyone. The letter of comment or concern is from Liliana, who's the owner of the other half of the semi. Her comments were related to wanting to be sure that the structural work that will take place will not adversely affect her house. that the roofing work will be done in such a way that there'll be no risk of water leaks into her property, et cetera. They're not really zoning issues, but I would like to assure her that we will have all of the structural work designed by a professional engineer, that I would like to have the engineer speak with her before we go ahead with the work, and that all the roofing work will be done in accordance with standard roofing details, et cetera. So we'll do our very best to ensure that the construction will not adversely affect her in any way.
Mr. Scott, just one question then.
Yeah.
So I take it that neither neighbor had access to the attic when there was no party wall?
On the contrary, I think they both do. I actually don't know for sure about 2 MOUTRAY, but for 4 MOUTRAY, which is the property I'm working on, there's like one of those fold down attic ladder stairs.
Oh.
And you can go up there, and perhaps they shouldn't, but they actually have, you know, some boxes and stuff stored in the attic. And then you can sort of see right across the ceiling of 2 MOUTRAY. So there's no division. So there's at least this to be said for the proposal, that it will significantly enhance fire safety if we build a proper firewall between the 2 properties at attic level.
Also privacy and security.
Well, acoustic privacy, certainly, yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mr. Scott. Panel, any questions? Okay, Lillian Brito.
Like I said, my concerns, it was just construction, and I'm already working with the vendors. I don't oppose to the project. I'm fine with it.
All right, could you just give us your name and your address for the record?
Sure. It's Liliana Brito. My address is 2 MOUTRAY Street.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, we don't need to hear from you further, Mr. Scott. Panel, do you have any further questions or comments, or do we have a motion? Zahir?
Thank you, Chair. I'll venture to put forward a motion to approve. There are no conditions attached, and from what I can see, this will not have an impact on anybody adjacent to the intended construction of the 3rd level, or the attic level. And as the agent has indicated, the new firewall will certainly be a positive enhancement to the property. So I move to approve with no conditions.
All right, do we have a seconder? Aaron, thank you. All in favor? Aaron? You have your approval, sir. Thank you. Number 1765 Bristol Avenue. In the purpose of this application to alter the existing 1-story detached dwelling by constructing complete 2nd and 3rd story additions, a new front porch and basement walkout, and rear 2nd and 3rd stories balconies. The altered dwelling will have 1 primary unit and 3 secondary units. It'll be a 4-plex. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, email correspondence from Transportation, and opposition from 52A Bristol Avenue. Mr. Reuter.
Hi, Gregory, you've been unmuted.
Yes. Can I be heard?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. So my name is Greg Reuter. I'm the architect for number 65 Bristol. And my office address is 77 Kippen-Davy Ave. This project was originally brought in front of the Committee of Adjustment about 8 months ago, and it failed, largely because there was a 4th story proposed. I was not the architect during that proposal. I was asked to redesign the project and to bring it to committee again. So the current proposal is reduced in height to 3 stories and conforms with the bylaw in terms of height. The proposal in general is to construct the new building on the foundation or a portion of the foundation of the existing structure, and to utilize portions of the ground floor structure moving up. So initially this proposal was utilizing zoning based on making use of the existing structure, but I felt that it was disingenuous to suggest that there would be a substantial amount of the ground floor structure being utilized moving forward. So we reorganized the submission so that it suggested new construction, if that makes sense. So I have actually gone around personally and knocked on the doors of houses adjacent to the site and walked those occupants through the proposal. I even had a number of them sign a document saying that they were satisfied with the proposal and would not be objecting. I also approached the neighbor immediately to the south who had originally opposed the previous proposal and walked them through the proposal, and they had no concerns with it. So if you like, I can walk you through the variances that have been submitted.
I don't think that'll be necessary. I think your explanation as to why this is back is good, and the fact that you've consulted with neighbors. I don't see anything in here that strikes me as excessive. My panel members may not agree with me, but we'll see. So panel, do you have any questions?
Could I please just walk through then quickly the kind of main aspects of the proposal? Is that
okay? Go ahead.
Okay. So the main aspects of the proposal are that the proposal will conform to height. The building depth is only slightly deeper at the ground floor than the building immediately to the north of it. But then on the second and third floor, the building steps back. So the building depth overall is consistent with neighboring structures. The building does not propose parking consistent with the original proposal. There's no parking proposed, partly because there's not enough room for parking in front of the existing structure, which we are utilizing. And also there is an existing large diameter tree, which we wish to protect through the construction. So considering that the property is close to multiple modes of transit, we felt that it was reasonable to not propose parking with this building. Aside from that, every effort is being made to propose a architecture of quality that is sympathetic to the adjacent structures. And that's kind of all I needed to say.
Okay. Any questions, panel? All right. Any comments, or do we have a motion? Yes, here.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is, I'm quite glad that the applicant has given a good presentation. The structure that is being proposed, I think, is quite a positive change. Having consulted all the folks that live nearby and allayed all their fears, I think is very critical in these circumstances. The fact that the building is stepped back both in the second and third floor levels, and there are no conditions from planning, because I think they're already indicating solid privacy partitions on all the balconies, so that's positive. There are no conditions attached to this particular application, so I'd be quite happy to move an approval without any conditions.
All right. Do we have a seconder? Yes, Nimrod. All in favor? You have your approval. Thank you, sir. Number 18, 296 Willard Avenue. Purpose of the application: alter the existing two-story detached dwelling by constructing a two-story rear addition. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, a report from Urban Forestry, 6 form letters in support from other properties on Willard Avenue. Mary Ellen Lynch.
Mary, you've been unmuted.
Good morning. My name is Mary Ellen Lynch. I'm from Lynch and Comiso Architects, located at 570 Annette Street. And I'm the applicant and agent on behalf of the owners.
Thank you.
The first thing, oh,
So,
go ahead.
Ms. Lynch, I don't think we need a presentation because it's pretty straightforward, but if you want to say something before I take it into committee, go ahead.
Yes, please. I just wanted to clarify that the purpose of this application doesn't have anything to do with the two-story rear addition because we already have a building permit for that addition. The only item under consideration for this application is an expansion of the front bay window on the second floor. So originally, the application had two separate smaller bay windows on the front elevation, and as you can see from the documents that I submitted, the intention now for both design and spatial considerations was that the bay window at the front become one single bay across the front, and therefore we had to request the two variances that are itemized in items 1 and 2.
Okay, thank you. Panel, do you have any questions? Okay, any comments? Do we have a motion? Yes, Nimrod.
Yeah, so the two variances are minor in nature. I don't know whether we need to make any change to the purpose of the application based on what the applicant has indicated. I'd leave that to the committee chair. And I would have a motion of approval with no conditions.
This forestry condition number 2, Nimrod?
Yeah, you're correct. That's right.
Through you, Mr. Chair, perhaps maybe the members can consider a condition that the variances are related to the expansion of the front bay window.
Do we need to change the purpose then?
It would be preferred if there was just the condition.
Okay.
Or maybe even just tying to the plans.
All right, well, why don't we do that? Nimrod?
Sure, let's tie it then to add a condition to tie the approval to the plans.
All right, thank you. We have a seconder. Is he here? All in favor? You have your approval. Thank you. Next, number 19, 130 First Avenue. And the purpose of this application is to alter the existing two-story detached dwelling by reconstructing the front porch, constructing a new front below-grade retaining wall and front basement walkout stairs. The existing rear concrete pad will be replaced with a detached ancillary building, a garage. With this application, we have materials submitted by the applicant. We have email correspondence from city planning. And we have a report from city planning and urban forestry and an 8-form letter in support. Gloria Apostolou.
Yes.
Yes, can we have your name and your address, please?
My name is Gloria Apostolou, and I'm the architect and agent for First Avenue.
Okay. I don't think, Ms. Apostolou, we need to have a presentation from you. It seems straightforward. But if you have anything you want to say to the panel, please go ahead.
Yes, there's just an error in the wording of the direction that the front of the house faces. And if that's significant, I'd like to amend it. So the front of the house faces south.
Where is that?
Variance number 5. It refers to
Side north lot line?
Okay, the front of the house should be west lot line, sorry, the front of the house should be south instead of west.
Oh, okay. So the front porch stairs will be located 0 meters from the front south lot line?
Correct.
Okay, and 0.14 meters from the side north lot line? That's
Side
not correct?
west lot line.
Okay. Oh, so it's south and west. So the proposal is front basement walkout stairs will be 0 meters from the front south lot line and 0.43 meters from the side west lot line. Is that right?
In the second sentence, it's the east lot line.
Okay. At the end, the last one is side east lot line, right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, are those the only amendments needed?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, is there a change being proposed to variance number 1 dealing with the garage height to 4.5 meters?
4.5 meters is the correct height that we are proposing.
Okay, so that's been changed too. Okay. Any other changes?
Not from us.
Okay, thank you. All right, panel, do you have any questions, any comments, or do we have a motion? Yes, Nimrod.
Okay, I think the variances as amended are minor in nature, and I would move approval subject to, I believe there are heritage planning conditions and urban forestry number 1.
Yes. Okay, do we have a seconder? Aaron? All right, all in favor? Have your approval. Thank you. Number 20, 523 Eglinton Avenue West. And the purpose of this application to construct a new 7-story mixed-use building containing 35 residential units, retail space at grade and underground parking. And with this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, email from Transportation Engineering, a report from Heritage Planning, and from Policy Manager, Policy Strategic Initiatives, Policy and Analysis, and correspondence and concern interest from 314 Warren Road and opposition from 42 Tarleton Road. Mr. Goldberg?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. It's Michael Goldberg, Goldberg Group, 2098 Avenue Road, Toronto, M5M4A8.
Okay, so there is someone of interest, so perhaps you better give us a brief presentation, Mr. Goldberg.
Sure. If I can have my presentation materials put on the screen, I can commence the conversation with the committee members. Thank you very much. So this is a development that's shown in red. This is Eglinton. You can see it's sort of midpoint along Eglinton between Avenue Road and Chaplin, where there are 2 LRT stations that are about to open hopefully soon. And members of the committee, this process started for the applicant a little bit more than 2 years ago. We engaged with the councillor, we engaged with city community planning and urban design, and we basically said to the staff at that time, we'd like to enter into a design process with you. We know that there may be some minor variances to the bylaw that are required, but we'll delay filing the minor variance application by first filing a site plan application and a section 111 application, which is the rental housing replacement application. So those two files were filed about 2 years ago. We've gone through a multiple submissions and resubmissions with the staff, and I think you have the comments from the staff. And I think what I can report to committee is you're seeing the product of a lot of review that has been done by city staff. So the section 111 application is well on its way, and you've got the communication from then. From there, you've got the heritage, which is just one of those storefronts, but we sort of commemorated those storefronts and that articulation in the front in the architecture. And you don't have communication from community planning. And I'm just going to be so bold as to, if you could keep it on that slide for just a moment, if you can be so bold as to say that I believe that community planning are completely satisfied and have no objection with the approval of this minor variance application. So what I will quickly do is I will indicate to you, going through the variances, the height is required. You know, you've got a general bylaw that you can see the height where it says V1 to get that 7th floor, and it's a partial 7th floor because of the angular plane. But the angular plane by the bylaw, it basically intersects with the balcony guardrails, no part of the building, and at the back and at the front of the building, the very, very top of the mechanical penthouse. And staff are satisfied with that limited amount of penetration into the angular plane. The front of the building variances in terms of V2 to a great extent arises from the articulation of the building, and because we are trying to commemorate the one heritage frontage at the front, a lot of that articulation arises from that, and that's variance number 2. In terms of variance number 3, the only residential uses on the ground floor are the back portion of the rear, which is the elevator, the garage elevator, and the bicycle storage. But all the front of facing the street and so on are all related to either the lobby or the retail uses. The 45-degree angular planes, variances 4 and 5, you see it on the screen right here. We're near complete compliant, but we have a few minor projections which staff are satisfied with. Variance 6 is the difference between a parking elevator system and a standard garage plan system. Number 7, of course, is the same thing. And number 8 and 9, if you can go to the very top, there we go. What happens is this building narrows down as you go to the top floor. And I think the crafters of this bylaw assume that you're going to have a bigger top floor to accommodate a mechanical penthouse. But what happens, you can see that this is a very limited top floor. It's only a partial floor. And this is the roof plan that's on the screen right now. So to accommodate the angular planes within the height limitations and to create a functional mechanical penthouse, we do require this extent. And quite frankly, I'm going to say that the crafters of this bylaw may not have fully anticipated this operational or functional aspect of the mid-rise building. But at least from our architects and mechanical engineer perspective, to have a rooftop of this size and a building of this size, this is the mechanical penthouse we have. But as you can see, it's stepped back from the front, it's stepped back from the rear, and from a pedestrian scale, because of all these step backs, it's going to have very, very limited visibility. Members of committee, that is my presentation. I'm satisfied. I think that the conditions requested are a little bit belts and suspenders, but they're not conditions that we're opposing, because I think we would have to do all of those things through the course of everything. But should you approve this application, which we are certainly hopeful you will, then that will allow the site plan process and the Section 111, the rental housing demolition and replacement process to be completed, so that we could put our, not we, but my client can potentially get into the ground this spring. And I appreciate your attention to this matter, and I'd be happy to answer any question you may have.
All right, thank you. Any questions, panel? Okay. Mr. Young?
Hi, Murray. You've been unmuted and you may turn on your video.
Hi, Murray Young, 124 Selwyn Road, Richmond Hill. I was just tuning in to monitor the proceedings, and I didn't really have any comments.
All right, thank you. All right, we don't have to get back to you, Mr. Goldberg, in that case. And panel, do you have comments or do we have a motion? Yes, Sahir.
Just a couple of comments, and perhaps after that I'll attempt a motion. I think this is a really interesting plan. I don't live too far from Yonge Street, and I'm glad to see these mid-rise structures and somewhat creative ones, as well as the angular plane at the south side of the building. So I think it's a really interesting design. I'm also quite intrigued by the parking arrangements, the parking vehicle lift, which is quite innovative. I don't believe, other than I think the applicants already mentioned the heritage condition. I believe planning had another condition related to rental dwelling, if I'm not mistaken. Transport had no objections. I think that was it. If there are no other conditions that I can think of, I'd be quite happy to move approval of this application.
I have some notes here about, okay. Mr. Goldberg, perhaps you could help me out here, because I had some notes about variances that were amended. Are they all included in this notice? Because I see the first one that I had was that variance number 1 has been reduced to 24.905 meters, but that's what's on our notice. So I just wondered if
yes. Am I on here? Yes, thank you. Yeah, variance number 1. Just let me make sure I'm giving you proper information here. There we go. It appears that it appears that the notice is correct.
in respect of variances number 8 and 9 as well?
I believe so. Let me just confirm for you, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Who made the motion? Was it Zahir?
I did. Yeah.
Okay. Did we have the staff conditions and the heritage conditions as part of your motion?
Yes, I think I did.
Okay. Seconder,
Zahir,
Nimrod?
Can we, how do you feel about adding another condition tying it to the plans, given that we've got angular plane penetrations, and it then is being secured by tying it to the plans and the the plans also show the step backs.
That would be perfectly fine.
Okay, in that case, do you second it, Nimrod? Okay, all in favor? You have your approval. Thank you, sir. Okay, and that completes the morning, the 9:30 list. It is now, well, is 1:01 p.m. We're a little late, but we did it. Okay, we reconvene at 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.